Right, ladies and gentlemen, it's gone 10 o'clock. Sorry, we're a few minutes late. Steve, are we all online? So just remind everyone we're online now. And welcome everyone to the executive on this Thursday, the 18th of April. And welcome also to people online. Pleased to see you all there. So without further ado, we shall start with the agenda. So agenda item 1, the minutes. Are you happy for me to sign them as a correct record of the executive held on the 7th of March and also the special meeting on the 13th of March, which was to do with the Dartmouth Park and Ride, if you remember. Are we all happy with that? Yeah, thank you very much. Excellent. Item 2, urgent business. I'm going to use my prerogative as the chairman, the discretion of the chairman. I want to say something about South West Water at this stage, because there is no doubt that our communities feel very let down by South West Water with what's going on, and I don't want to preempt any debate or options that we might come up with, but this is just to say that I will be bringing a motion to the July full council meeting. I would have liked to have done it in the May one, but that's the AGM and you're not allowed to have motions at the annual general meeting, unfortunately. So I will be bringing forward a motion in July, which will be looking at various options that we may come forward with as a council. I think we have to be aware that not only do we have the health and environmental implications that tipping raw sewage into our waterways affects us, but also it has a massive impact on our tourism industry. So it's a really important industry and point that I think that we owe it to our communities to show that we are actually trying to do something about it. And whereas I read in the article, there's an article today in the paper from the Totnes MP talking about the rules and regulations that government have brought in. But I just sometimes wonder whether that's actually working or it's going far enough. So, I'm going to say that everything will be on the table here. And I've been quoted in the press about talking about civil disobedience and not paying your water rates because you're not getting the service that you're meant to be paying for. I've been warned against that. Doesn't mean I won't be bringing it up. But so really it's a sort of, it's a preemptive warning, and also, well, not a warning, but just to say that's a heads up, but also that if members have ideas about how they feel we can try and tackle this massive issue for us here in the South Hams, be very happy to hear them, and then we can have a full and open debate about it in July. So, yeah, of course, John.
I've had meetings with the West Country Rivers Trust and the South Catchment Partnership, South Devon Catchment. I can't remember what it. South Devon Catchment Partnership. Yeah, and the Friends of the Dart and various other organisations, and they are of a one voice. That exactly what you're saying, that there is a real issue. So I think whenever we take this forward and how we take this forward, we ought to be in consultation with these groups, because they've got a lot of information and data on exactly where the problems are and have got ideas about how to solve them.
Excellent. John, are you going to be at the Sustainable South Hams thing on Saturday? Let's talk about it there, because a lot of the characters will be there as well, but I think that would be very useful. Yeah. Nikki, did you want to?
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to air you on the side of caution about telling people to withhold payments for their water bills. I do think that's irresponsible of you, I have to say, because what it does is it then puts people into debt, and they get judgments against them and court orders. They can get blacklisted, they can get credit, their credit file can be affected if they don't pay their bills. So I would just ask you not to say that in future, because I wouldn't like to see any resident withholding payment and then being chased through the courts for their money and being having a bad name against their credit score. Thank you.
No, thank you, Nikki, and you know it's good advice. Whether I take it or not is another matter. But what I say, I wouldn't tell anyone to do anything. You know, it would be, you know, I'm not coercing anyone to do anything, but it would just be. But that would hopefully come out in the debate that we have in July, rather than have it here now. Jackie.
Thank you. Last week, the Environment Agency came and gave a presentation, an informal one, to Totnes Town Council. It was arranged by one of the councillors, and it was open to the public. It was very clear there that they have a certain amount of money that they're spending on going around trying to help people to kind of reduce flooding and stuff. But it just seemed also that there wasn't such a major problem with funding in that agency, which is brilliant. And I think maybe we should be lobbying them to be far more proactive in doing things with South West Water and the various other companies around the country, because it seems it's like the post office affair. It's all been aired and everybody's going, oh, that's terrible. But when you actually look at the detail, nothing's really changed. You know, South West Water got seriously fined. So that's going to be money that they won't have now to spend on doing the things they need to do, because their investors are still getting the money. And I think somehow we need to go up to that higher body, the Environment Agency, that has the ability to fine them as and when they need to, but also to work with them much more closely to start really addressing the pollution, because keep telling us what the pollutants are isn't making it any safer or any more pleasant for anybody. It gives us renewable energy, and it stops it going in the water, and it replenishes the soils. Nobody's mentioning that, and I think, you know, for our energy sort of work that we're doing here, which John obviously heading up on climate change, I think that's the sort of thing that we could actually start to drive a new agenda for it, which could be, you know, win-win.
And I thank you, Jackie, and I think that was ideas and opinions about it, and so I look forward to that debate in July. But like I said, if people have got ideas or issues or suggestions, please bring them forward beforehand, or at least make sure that you're ready and primed for the July full council meeting. Thank you very much. Right, that's the end of the urgent business. Item 3, division of the agenda. I'm not sure that we need to divide the agenda. There may be something with it. No, it's all okay. So everything, no need to divide the agenda. Declarations of interest, member. John.
Yeah, I declare a non-pecuniary interest as a result of being this council's representative on the Freeport board. I have dispensation from the monitoring officer to not only speak to, but also to vote.
Thank you, John. That's noted. And any other members? No. In which case, agenda item 5, public question time. I did have a list, but I seem to have lost them now. Oh, lovely. Thank you. Okay, right. So we've got 6 questions, I think. So question 1 is from Chris Wright. Is Chris Wright here with us? Yeah. Chris, do you want to read out your question? Yeah. Yeah. Just come up to the
Reads search. Can the representative member on the Freeport board influence the Freeport to release the original bid document? If not, why not? When it's so clearly in the public interest to know its content, especially regarding Dartmoor.
Okay, I'll answer that. Okay, thank you, Chris, for your question. The outer boundary rationale from the original bid document will be put in the governance section of the Plymouth and South Devon Freeport website, alongside the full business case and board meetings. This is with the Freeport website team for publishing, and will be uploaded onto the website by the end of next week.
Thank you, John. And question 2 is from Christelle Goodwin. Is Christelle here? Yeah. Thank you, Christelle. No, I'm not going to on this occasion because we've got a number of these, and also we've got the whole debate on the Freeport coming up as well. So I think the Constitution says there isn't a supplementary. Sometimes I use my discretion. Yeah, but not this time. Okay. Christel, do you want to?
Yeah.
You got that? Lovely, thank you.
The leader of Southam's council has stated that if the Freeport is not working to the benefit of residents, the council will pull out. What are the criteria and timescales for this? And has the leader consulted on the legal and cost implications of this? Thank you.
Christel, thank you very much indeed for your question. The Freeport is a 25-year project and will be subject to ongoing assessment, governance and monitoring, as is the case for all the projects. It will be through this process that success will be judged. The Council has a 5-year review term within the agreement between the government and the local authority partners, which will be the mechanism utilised.
Thank you. No, I'm not going to allow subs. Sorry about that. And question 3 is from Jim Funnell. Hi, Jim. Nice to see you.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you reading Private Eye.
Okay. So in Private Eye, 5th January, it was stated that, unlike EU Freeports, the annual HMRC Border Force audit will instead be done by the Freeport itself. What reassurances of transparency can residents expect from the Freeport when it still will not release the document relating to Dartmoor outer boundary? But you can just answer the first bit of that question.
Okay, thank you for the question, Jim. The government remains in charge of and will conduct the security audit for the Plymouth and South Devon Freeport. It has not been undertaken by the Freeport as suggested in the question. The Freeport will arrange to publish this document on its website as and when it is available for publication.
Thank you, John. And question 4 from Martin Goldschmidt. Is Martin?
Please, can you quantify in simple terms what Southam's financial commitment to the Freeport is and what the financial benefits to Southam's taxpayers will be? Also, what the government is investing overall in the Freeport and how much of this taxpayers' investment will go to subsidise private companies like Babcock?
Thank you, Martin, for your question. The aim and ambition of the Freeport from a Southam's perspective is singular and simple. It is to encourage development of the employment land allocated in our joint local plan at Sherford and Langage by companies that wish to contribute to our economy and create local job opportunities. The Plymouth and South Devon Freeport aims to create over 3,500 jobs over the project period. The acceleration of infrastructure works, i.e. roads, active travel links, power upgrades for the grid, are all specific contributors to that specific aim. The government has allocated £25 million of funding towards the Freeport. This has to be matched by public or private sector investment. The majority of the £25 million allocated for the Plymouth and South Devon Freeport has been allocated on public sector-led projects. As set out in the executive report on the agenda today, Southam's potential financial investment in the project it is leading for the Freeport has been reduced from 5.5 million to 3.5 million. This will be financed through external borrowing from the Public Works Loan Board and paid for by the business rates income generated from the Freeport over the life of the project. Therefore, the Freeport is projected to be self-financing in that business rates generated will pay for the borrowing costs. There have been no subsidies paid to Babcock.
Thank you. And question 5 and 6 are from Paul Wesley. Paul, nice to see you.
Yes. Otherwise, it doesn't go out.
Thank you. This is more tightly choreographed than Prime Minister's questions, isn't it? Okay. In the 2 years that have passed since the agreement of South Hams District Council to participate and contribute funds towards South Devon and Plymouth Freeport, how much money, including officer time, has been spent on this project to date?
Thank you, Paul, for the question. A significant amount of officer time has been spent on the Freeport, mainly by the Director of Finance and the Director of Place and Enterprise. They have and continue to support the governance, financial monitoring and the Council's scrutiny of it, while contributing to specific project streams within it. In particular, preparing reports and briefings for the Council committee system, including the Audit and Governance Task and Finish Group, and quarterly reporting to the Executive. It cannot be quantified beyond that, as directors do not keep timesheets and work across numerous council priority areas. The council spent money on legal and commercial specialist advice relating to land acquisitions connected to the Freeport. The amounts spent have been as follows: £25,000 for the land valuation at Sherford, £8,542 on subsidy control advice for the land acquisition at Sherford, and £1,500 on a geotechnical assessment. The council has also spent £3,329 on financial modelling for the Freeport, which is the council's share of a shared resource for the Freeport Partnership. These amounts are recoverable from the business rates income that will be generated from the Freeport. £46,800 has been paid for legal support for the proposed compulsory purchase of land at Langage, which is no longer progressing, as the land is to be brought forward by the landowners for development. I'd also like to add that a considerable amount of time and money has been spent on answering emails from a campaign group. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And your second question?
My second question is, what measures have been put in place to ensure that the public are fully informed about the SDPF, and what plans are there to inform the public in the future, to keep them informed?
Thank you, Paul, for your second question. The Freeport publishes the minutes of its board meetings, which provide an update on the activities of the Freeport Company and the progress of projects. Plymouth City Council, Devon County Council and South Hams District Council all bring regular public reports to their committees, just as the one on the agenda today. The Freeport website also includes regular news updates. Regular news reports on the progress of the Freeport projects will be published and circulated to news outlets, as well as being included on the Freeport website. The Freeport is committed to providing transparency and continuously updates the website to ensure easy access to information.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Paul. And just to add to that, I mean, I see on the front of the Gazette, that's the Kingsbridge and Salcombe Gazette, the Totnes Times, that is advertised that the South Hams Society at their AGM are debating the Freeport, which John will be and Chris will be will be there. So members of the public can question them, hear what they've got to say. I've also made it quite clear that I'm very happy to attend public meetings. I can't make that one, I'm afraid, because it's the Slapton AGM at the same time. So I won't be there, but I'm very happy to come to meetings and to answer questions. You know, what I will say is that you know, we're not going to all agree about it, but you know, my view is that we are striving here as a council to make the Freeport the best it can be and deliver what we want it to for the residents and our communities in the South Hams. You know, that's our goal. and that's what we're trying to do. And hopefully, history will prove us correct. And if it doesn't, you know, I say to Jackie and Georgina, you were right. But and Denise actually, absolutely. But I mean, you know, we will wait and see it happens. Anyway, thank you all very much, and no more public questions. So I move on to agenda item 6, which is the executive forward plan. Members, you've got that printed before you or published before you. I don't know if there's any comments. Jackie.
Just to go back to the previous point, if I may, I just take exception to it, the suggestion there's a campaign group. I have to say I'm not aware of a campaign group. There are people who are asking questions, but there's no kind of formal campaign group, and I don't think it's fair to respond to a public question in that way, because it's actually kind of, it undermines what's being asked. There's a lot of different people who are, you know, just raising questions, and I think it should be seen in the spirit of that, not suggesting there's a campaign group. And I would ask for that comment to be withdrawn.
Well, yeah, I mean, Jackie, I think it's a moot point, really, isn't it? I mean, what, you're telling me that all the people who've asked these questions haven't discussed it amongst themselves? I mean, is that a definition of a group or is that a non-group? I don't know. No, they've never met each other. Oh, okay. Yeah, look, it's not something that, you know, I don't think we need to fall out about that, if I'm honest. I mean, if John wishes to withdraw it, he can, but if he doesn't, then I'm quite happy for him to leave it as it is.
If it causes an upset, then I'll withdraw it.
Thank you,
John. So that has been withdrawn. Thank you very much, John. Much appreciated. Right. So we move on now to executive forward plan. Any questions, members, queries, points you want to raise on it? No, we all okay with that? So I think it's just for noting, isn't it? Yeah, so that's duly noted. Thank you. Right, agenda item 7, Freeport update. John, back to you. It's the John Burt show today.
Okay, thank you, Julian. Okay, so all members undoubtedly have read the report and the appendices, etc. So I wonder if I could just pick out the key points, which, but before doing that, I'd just remind members that at our full council meeting in December, one of the 17 recommendations that we received from the Audit and Governance was to have a regular report back to the executive, and I think it's every 3 months. So this is the first of the reports back to the executive following the resolution at the December full council meeting. So the report has been circulated, and perhaps, as I said a moment ago, I'll pick out the key points. I think what is important is what's set out at 2.1 and 2.2. And bearing in mind that there may be members of the public who haven't actually had the benefit of looking at the report and may be viewing this, I think it's important that we stress the importance of the Freeport as far as this council is concerned. And it's 2.1, it says that Plymouth and South Devon Freeport is one of 12 freeports in the UK tackling long-standing challenges in disadvantaged areas. Numerous data shows that the far southwest and Devon in particular have a jobs and industry mix more weighed towards lower paid and lower productivity sectors. In addition, businesses in the far southwest tend to export less and invest less in innovation. The net result is reduced opportunity for the residents of the area, lower incomes than in other parts of the country, and in contrast to the stunning natural environment, some of the most deprived communities in the UK. Freeports will not on their own solve a situation that has been in place for more than 20 years, but the Plymouth and South Devon Freeport is a major opportunity to contribute towards closing the gap. And then I'll just repeat what's in 2.2. The Freeport builds on the strengths of the area with a specific focus on advanced engineering, businesses that enable net zero, marine defence and the space sector. With tax incentives now confirmed through to 2031, the Freeport aims to create over 3,500 jobs over the period and attract just under 250 million worth of private sector investment into the three port tax sites. Moving on, it's 3.4 of the report. It deals with various infrastructure projects update, and since that report, there has been a further development which I'd like to report on. And I make reference to, if I can find it, the press release that was issued by Devon County Council after its meeting last Wednesday. And I'll just read out parts of the relevant parts of the news release. It says councillors on the 10th of April approved the delivery of two-phase spine road, which extends the existing Kingsway Road and a multi-use bridge across the A38 Deep Lane Junction, which will connect the new community of Sherford to the growing development. Phase 1 will focus on extending the road so that it serves the Langage Customs and Tax site. The ambition is for work to begin in November this year for completion the following spring. The road will be delivered in such a way that it will allow developers to deliver access points to the site in the future as individual plots receive planning permission and become available. Then it goes on to say that the work on the multi-use bridge is expected to start in December of this year. And then it concludes by saying the delivery of this important infrastructure, as well as improvements to the Sandy Road / Holland Road roundabout, is funded by 9.6 million of the seed funding this is given to the Freeport by the government. And on top of that, there is a 14 million pounds worth of borrowing by Devon County Council, which was approved by full council in February this year. So this is important. It's important move forward because it effectively opens up Langage for the employment that we all wish to, that we wish to see there. At 3.6 of the report, dealing with the Sherford land acquisition, it says that a verbal update will be given as a part 2 discussion. There will be no need to go into part 2. The position is that matters are progressing on that, but at the moment, contracts have not been exchanged for the purchase of the land. And just to conclude, you'll see that I'm proposed that there be an additional recommendation on the paper, and the additional recommendation is that the Audit and Governance Committee continues in its monitoring role of the Freeport and be encouraged to set up a working group at its next scheduled committee meeting to monitor the implementation of the 17 recommendations that were generated by the Freeport Task and Finish Group and were ultimately supported by full council at its meeting on the 14th of December. In other words, this is a request from the executive to the Audit and Governance Committee to continue in its role as monitoring the Freeport and in doing so set up this working group. Perhaps I could ask Chris if he wishes to add anything to the report.
Thank you, Councillor Birch, and if the committee would indulge me in a similar vein, I think it's, given it's a public report and there are public in the room, it'd be nice just to flesh out the content a little. I'd like to draw the committee's attention to recommendation 2, which is that the council's borrowing requirement for the Freeport has reduced from 5.5 to 3.5 million. That translates into £116,000 a year reduction in the costs. That's £116,000 a year that can now be spent to the benefit of residents. So I think that's a positive step. And turning to the second appendices, which is the marketing and communications update. And so this is information that's on the website now, but I think it shows some of the activity that's been going on and brings it to life a little. So starting with the good news on the green hydrogen electrolyser that is proposed to be constructed within the Freeport. That has been a nice alignment of two government policies around both the Freeport but also their net zero hydrogen strategy. And the private sector developer that is bringing that forward has secured what's called the price for difference, effectively, but it's the way the government procures energy. So it hasn't received funding from the government for the plant. It is funded by private money, but they will be able to secure the price point at which they can sell, and it gets really complicated after that. But it's really good news, and I'm pleased to be able to report that. I'm also delighted that there has been one of many, I'm sure, but a clear skills intervention, which is an alignment between the government, Freeport, and Babcock, and and the Department for Work and Pensions, and that's designed to bring. It's called a skills-based work academy from one of the Freeport buildings, and it's designed to bring people back into work. And you'll know there's a national discussion about productivity for the country, so appreciate it's small steps, but it's a positive one. And then there's been some seed capital has been deployed and spent to improve the capacity of the ports. So Associated British Ports have done some improvement work, and that was referenced this morning on the radio, I noticed, about securing improved ports for the government, for the country, to improve import and export opportunities. So that's something else I wanted just to flag up. And I've said probably in this room many times that it is often the case, not always, but often the case, that if you're successful with securing funding, it can lead to future success. And I'm pleased to see that as a result of the Freeport, there's been a further £20 million worth of levelling up funding secured, which will drive other economic activity. So it's linked to Plymouth City Council. They took that bid, but it was off the back of the Freeport that they've done it. So not directly, perhaps, of relevance to South Hams in the context that we didn't lead the bid, but of course, people that live in South Hams work in Plymouth, and people that live in Plymouth work in South Hams. So there is a link. Thank you, Councillor Birch.
Thank you very much, John and Chris. Members, over to you. Any questions? I'll take Jackie first, and then Denise, and then Georgina, if I may. Jackie.
Check how we're doing this. We're just asking questions, or are we going to make points at the same time, or are we going back to make points?
Okay, let's do questions first, then, and then we'll open it up to debate. So, the recommendations are noting as such. So, apart from the last one, which I'd be happy to second that, John. I think that's an excellent idea. But anyway, so Jackie, I hope that's all clear.
Yeah, so I'll go back to point one in a minute, but to start off with, point two, the Heart of South West has been incorporated and the LEP has been has diminished now, and the LEP has come into this. That was all set up in 2014 with a lot of money, same problem of very little public consultation, and sort of a lot of people never knew about it. And that has basically failed. It hasn't delivered what it was intended to do. So what my issue is, we're applying the same methodology by investing in private companies and trusting them to do the right thing. And we don't, are we going to achieve anything more than what the Heart of South West failed to achieve with big money? And putting more money at it and more freedom, is that really going to do what we want it to do? And I suppose one thing I would ask is, what are the KPIs in this? The key performance indicators as we go through, to make sure that as it goes forward, we can really be sure that what is happening is to the benefit of everybody and is actually achieving what it's set out to do, rather than sort of say, oh, well, after sort of 5 years, well, we didn't get all the jobs we wanted filled because of X, Y, Z. We shouldn't wait for 5 years to find out that a lot of really important money, and we don't know what the financial situation might be like in 5 years if we're spending more money on flooding and the issue of climate change. I think we need to know that it's really secure, and it's got that eyes wide open approach to trying to achieve something for everybody. And what we're hearing today, as much as it might appear to be some kind of constructed campaign group, I can assure you it's not. Well, it's my word for it anyway. But is that I think there's a lot of concern out there. There's a lot of concern that I'm hearing, and quite reasonably, I'm actually reporting back to my parish councils about what is coming forward, and people ask questions, because if you don't tell people something's going on, they're not going to ask questions. But I think now those questions are arising, and they're really serious questions. Yeah. My second question is about the whole thing of the position with the pipeline. In 1.58, there's reference to the government's perhaps funding for South West hydrogen plant has been secured at Langage, planning has been granted, and the project is now in design phase. There is a planning application that has not been approved, which is the pipeline. I want to ask, is that going to come to planning committee here for approval? And why is it a 9.5 kilometre pipeline being skirted around the edge of Dartmoor? When, as far as I understood it at the time, the whole point of having Langage producing this green energy was to produce, to actually have local renewable energy produced for the very immediate area. Putting it through a 9.5 kilometre pipeline, apart from the sheer cost of that, and who's going to pay for that? Have we added that cost in already, or is that an extra cost we're going to have to look at? And why is it that nothing was really said about this? It wasn't brought to the Task and Finish group, and it seems that there was, even as far as I understand it, the question about it being discussed, apparently some of our officers didn't even know about it very recently, and that's a very serious issue because a whacking great pipeline going around. And my question is, on top of that, is it because there's potentially lithium under Dartmoor that this could suddenly be supporting a company that could then have free energy to explore this? Lithium is one of the critical things for all the batteries and the going forward with electronic, but there's been reports recently about China and being able to produce all the cars because they've got secured all the lithium across Africa. If we've got lithium under Dartmoor, there's going to be there will be issues raised about that. So there's that question. And then the final question, sorry, going on a bit here, is no, I'll come back to that actually. But the final question is, why is 1.2 in there? I've never seen a report which has got sort of like supporting the portfolio holder for the economy. I'm not being rude, John, and this isn't to say it's not a just point, but I've never seen a council report that says it's got the benefit of political leadership and oversight by the portfolio holder. So just a bit, just raising it. So those are my questions.
Yeah, no, Jackie, I'll have a go at some of them. I've got to say about the pipeline, I don't know much of the detail. I certainly don't know whether there's lithium under Dartmoor or not. I don't think that's something we should necessarily. I mean, Georgina's nodding, nodding, saying there is. Well, well done you. I mean, that's yeah. Look, as far as the LEP is concerned, couldn't agree more. I think the LEP was did not work. It failed us. And one of the reasons why it failed us is because it had no democratic accountability whatsoever. I would suggest that this report today, the fact that we're recommending that it goes the 17 KPIs, as some of them call it, and some of those are definitely KPIs, going to the Audit and Governance Committee, is exactly the kind of thing, the sort of scrutiny that the LEP, Heart of the South West LEP, did not happen. And so hopefully that will come out with different conclusions. Look, I'm perfectly prepared to understand that there are risks involved in this, and it may all go horribly wrong. But it could go right as well. And I think what you heard from Chris when he was reporting, and from John, that the fact that government are investing 25 million in infrastructure in the South Hams, that Devon County Council that's all of Devon County, are investing money in infrastructure for the good of the South industry and the economy in the South Hams. I appreciate it's taxpayers' money, but that taxpayers' money is being spent in the South Hams. And I think it would be churlish for us as a council to say we're not having that. So, my view is I've always been tried to be as pragmatic as possible about this, is we will let it run its course and see what happens. If at some stage, when it goes to A&G, they turn around and they go, it's not working, it's not delivering, it's giving everything that we didn't want, and all it is the public sector subsidising the private sector, absolutely, we will look at it again. But my view is at the moment is that we owe it to our residents and communities within the South Hams to let it run its course as it stands at the moment, because there is nothing. The government have basically said to us, "Here's a tenner, you can buy it for us for a fiver," and I think that we have to take that opportunity. The pipeline, I don't know much about. Certainly, don't know much about the lithium. If it's going through the planning process, I'm certainly, it's not for us to, planning is a quasi-judicial process. We certainly can't hear it at executive start demanding this or that within the planning process. There is a planning application that's live that will go through its due process. Whether it goes to the planning committee or not, that is up to as you know, with the scheme of delegation, that will be up to the local members in the end. if they want it to go to the planning. They may feel that in the public interest it should, and that may well be the case. I don't know, is it in your patch, or it is? So, I mean, Dan's listened to what you've said. Dan and Tom are the two local members, so they may well feel that it should go to the planning committee. The final one, I think, and I think it's fair to say that John is a breath of fresh air in respect of the hands-on approach that he has to our economic development within this council. We may not, in my view, we didn't get that before, and I think it's absolutely right that we should highlight it. Again, you might not necessarily agree, but I think it is. I think he's doing a great job, being fully involved, prepared to answer questions, turning up at public meetings like next Thursday, to face the public, which is something that did not happen in the past. So, you haven't seen it before. Well, maybe because it wasn't relevant before, but it is now. So that would be my answer to that one. John, I don't know if you wanted to add anything else.
No, I thank you for answering the questions.
Then you're saying the 17 recommendations are the KPIs then?
Well, some of them are definitely KPIs, aren't they? They are. So they talk about the return on business rates. They talk about what kind of industries and businesses are going on there. So, look, I can't, off the top of my head, I can't remember which one of them you could say were a KPI, but I think they are sorts of KPIs. Georgina, I think, are you on audit and governance? No. Is Sam, yeah, Sam Dennis, yeah. So Sam is. I think you've heard it. I mean, I would very much want to see A&G acting as looking at those KPIs and saying, are we delivering or not? Because look, all right, it's gone down from 5.5 to 3.5, but it's still a lot of money, and we're borrowing it. And I think the repayment on that per annum is, top of my head, about 200 grand a year. So we need to get that back. And if we're not getting it back, then obviously it's starting to cost us. And at that stage, we're like, well, this isn't the deal.
KPIs give us the opportunity to tweak as we go, because
absolutely,
you can measure, because they're quite independent, and they can be more than just like the money. They can be the social benefits and all sorts of things that we can then weave in. So I think it's a really important thing that we should sit down and actually look at KPIs. Heath Baldry, who used to be on this council, was very keen on KPIs, and I think they really are useful.
Look, Jackie, obviously we're, all members of the council are welcome to attend those meetings, whether they're members of the committee or not. And I think if you've got views on that, then I think you should share that with the committee and see if you can persuade them that would be a good way forward. But I can't see any problems with that. Can I just also add that probably we haven't said before is that something new that started now is that we as the council and myself as the leader will be meeting with the leader of county, Plymouth and South Hams, with the chief executives there, and we will be talking about the strategic progress of the Freeport, not the day-to-day running of it, but where we want it to go, what we want it to achieve, and things like that. That I think is going to be a crucial meeting. I have to say that I think there were areas of pushback within the Freeport that felt that we should keep our noses out of it. Absolutely not. I made it quite clear that we want to be involved in those top level strategic decisions, as we should be, and as is written into its constitution. So we will do that. And again, any feedback that we get from A&G or individual members, or indeed members of the public, will be very useful for us to push that forward within those meetings. I'm not absolutely sure whether those are public meetings, I have to say. It's transparency. Yeah, I mean, I would hope that they would be, but in a way, in the end, that's not my gift. But certainly, I would expect minutes to be published from that, so that members of the public can see that. Is that for you for questions? And then, Jackie, if you want to make some comments at the end.
I didn't get an answer about the cost of the pipeline and who's paying for it. Is that already accounted for?
Yeah, I'd leave that to John, if I may.
This pipeline is a private initiative. There's no money being put into this project by the Freeport, the government, etc. It is the private initiative. It is the subject of a planning application going under reference 0103/24/FUL. And as you mentioned a moment ago, it will be determined in accordance with our set procedure for dealing with planning applications as to whether or not it comes to the DM committee. Then really it's in the hands of the local members on that. Therefore, this is, I mean, it's all the details relating to the pipeline are set out in the planning application. And I think at the 3rd of April, I sent full details of this to all members of this council, in which I set out what was happening. I set out details of the planning application. I set out the procedure that was being followed, and I made the point that this is a private initiative, that there's no money being contributed to the pipeline by the Freeport. And it is very, as I keep saying, it is a private initiative project. It is not a Freeport project.
So no money, apart from private sector.
But it's highly relevant to the Freeport. I don't think that's fair to say that it's nothing to do with the Freeport.
Well, I think what John's saying is it's nothing to do with the Freeport in respect of funding or whatever. It's a private initiative.
But sending all the gas to to a private company when we were understanding we were getting renewable energy as part of the kind of the big tick box for the Freeport, and it's not going to be made locally available because we found now apparently green hydrogen can be quite dangerous for residential benefit use. So it's like it just seems like it's one of the benefits is not happening.
Jackie, it's a new technology, and you know it's classed as a renewable form of energy at the moment. So look, I don't want to get into arguments and details about that, but I mean, you've heard that it's a private enterprise, and you know, private enterprise. We live in a free country.
But it was solar power there, and we're losing that.
Well, you know, I'm sure there can be solar as well. I don't think they're mutually exclusive, are they?
Just remind Councillor Hodson that in fact a press release was sent out, and I think all members were copied in, when the Carlton were awarded a substantial sum of money by the government, and the Chief Executive Officer of the Freeport was reported as saying the following, and I'll read this out. It's congratulations to Carlton Power on this announcement with regard to the Langage Green Hydrogen Hub. This hydrogen hub will be the first of its kind, not only for Plymouth and South Devon, but for the region. The Freeport team is committed to working with innovative businesses and partners around the world to develop clean mobility solutions using hydrogen and other energy sources to support a cleaner and more sustainable future for the Plymouth and South Devon area. So we welcome this, the Freeports welcome this initiative, but it is very much, and I'll repeat again, a private initiative.
With public funding.
Well, the government have given some of the funding. I think it was match funding there. But again, that's not, you know, if you want, take that up with the MP, I think, or government. It's not us. Right. Denise, did you have some questions, or did you want to make a point before we go on to it?
Just some questions, yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to ask about the pipeline. That's been covered.
Yeah.
I do feel, I know you said about it's going before planning, through the planning process, but you know, we are looking at the Freeport. I do think we need to be aware of all these issues as well, because otherwise, you know, everything's being looked at separately in silos, and I do think we need to have all the information at our fingertips, including about, you know, what's going on with the pipeline and in its planning application. I would hope it, I mean, as you say, it's up to the members, but I would hope it goes before the planning committee. It's a 5-mile underground pipeline, and hydrogen transport isn't widespread in the UK, as the report says. And I understand that, you know, a lot of one of the local parish councils is quite concerned. So I would hope that their concerns are being listened to. They want an extension, as I understand it, but that's, as you say, part of the planning process. But we are, you know, the overarching body in the council looking at the Freeport overall, and you know, we have a duty of care to our residents, generally, and I know that there is some concern, as you know, about this pipeline. It seems to skirt some sort of tungsten mine on the outskirts of Dartmoor. It doesn't go into Dartmoor, I don't think, but it's overlooked from Dartmoor, and so there's concern about.
Denise, can I just stop you there?
Yeah.
Look, I mean, we know that there's a planning application in
Yeah.
there. It is not for this committee
No.
to direct the planning department, or indeed the planning committee, or indeed the local members as to how that should be dealt with.
No.
That is that's a separate process. I think you're absolutely right that we should note it, but it's not for us to say one way or the other, I'm afraid. You sit on the planning, well, no, you don't sit on the planning committee anymore.
I'm in transition.
Yeah, but
I
so
think it highlights part of the problem. I think it highlights part of the problem of us, you know, of this situation we're in, unfortunately.
Well, yes, it does. But like I said, I mean, if we were to do something now and to direct the planning department or the planning committee or whatever about that, we would be up for judicial review, because we would have broken the rules of planning. It's not for us to decide that. Well, that is its own. It's a private company putting a private application for a pipeline, and it will go through the due process, and that is laid out quite clearly in our scheme of delegation. And that let that process go. We can note it, but it's not for us to necessarily comment or to. So I don't think we should be debating about the pipeline at this stage, if I'm honest.
I just because residents are involved, I think we should, you know, bear in mind residents' views, which is what we're doing, of course.
And that will come up at the planning committee, or indeed be taken into account when the planning application is being looked at.
Yes, which is good. The other one was on Chris mentioned the green hydrogen electrolyser and talked about it being complicated, and which of course it is. Just trying to cut through, you know, the keyword green energy, green credentials. Can we hear about the green credentials, assuming it's 100% green hydrogen powered by renewable energy? Would Chris or John like to just talk a little bit about that? And also, I understand there was some sort of capacity issues. MW is megawatts, is it? Was 10 megawatts, is it now 7? Can I just get some clarification on capacity issues? Because I think there was some confusion about that. And the other thing I was in Appendix B, I think it is, there was some talk about broadening target sectors. And can I ask what that means for the future, broadening target sectors? It doesn't sort of elaborate on that, so just a little bit of clarification on that as well would be good. Thanks.
Thank you. So my understanding is the hydrogen plant is powered through green energy, and it has to meet that definition, otherwise it can't call itself that. So it's not for me to judge it, but that is the standard that the government will hold it to account on, and on the basis that, so it's not, just to clarify, there's no government money going into building the hydrogen plant. It's not government funded. What is funded, and this is exactly the same for wind power and every other form of renewable, is the government has a complex mechanism whereby it tries to levy the playing field to attract renewable investment. It follows, and that's why I say it's complicated, because I'm not an expert in this space, but that's what's happened here. So for clarity, it's not public money that's funding this hydrogen plant, but the government's strategy on renewable energy allows it to be viable. So that's the position with it. But yes, it's green energy as per the government's definition, not mine, and I'm not the one judging, but that is my understanding. Forgive me, Denise. The other questions? The capacity.
Supply capacity.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming MW is megawatts.
So it very much depends. It's a bit like a car. You get one power out of the engine, you get another power actually when you measure it at the wheels, and that's the discrepancy. So the power in electricity versus the capacity of the electrolyzer. And again, you'll have to forgive me now. I'm absolutely out of my comfort zone on how these things work. What they're planning to build is the same as what they've always said they were planning to build, and it's of the order of that. But Carlton Power, I'm quite sure, would be comfortable in explaining exactly what they're proposing to do. The planning application, I'm sure, states, because they have planning for the electrolyzer, it's a matter of public record what they're building there, and I'm sure that would answer that question.
Yeah, perhaps you could come back to us on that one. And
Absolutely.
the other one was about broadening target sectors. My other question in Appendix B, what that might mean if you are aware of that.
So as you'll know, the Freeport has a gateway policy, and rightly so, because it's really important that the Freeport sticks to that process. So as with all things, the gateway policy is on the website. It's there to be read. It's not hidden in any way. And I think there's been a very minor set of changes to it, which just reflect the working, the way in which it works. So again, anyone interested can read it. But it doesn't have anything in it material in so much as I'm trying to think of how I can bring it to life for you in a way that isn't just a sort of a comma and a full stop, really.
Chairman, I could
Thank
actually answer the thing about the 10 to 7 megawatt drop.
Go on then.
That's standard change when you produce like solar. When you convert it to another form of energy, you have about a 30% change. Like the anaerobic digester at Totnes, the amount produced there as energy reduces to methane by 30% loss on every transfer of type. Standard.
Thank you. Georgina.
Thank you. It's just a matter of clarification on a couple of points. The first one being we voted at full council in December to accept the recommendations from the Task and Finish group. Just to clarify, did that mean that we were therefore by default accepting the continuation of the Freeport? Because I remember specifically asking that question in December, and I was told our vote was not to say that we accepted the Freeport, it was a vote to continue with it. It was literally just a vote to accept the recommendations. Could I have some clarification on that, please? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't actually at that meeting, but my understanding is that you're perfectly entitled to put in an amendment at that meeting saying that you wish to withdraw or to keep going with the Freeport. That didn't actually happen. It did.
Can I answer?
Yeah, John. I'll leave it, John, because you were there.
Yeah, I'd just say that we've had Georgina and I have had some correspondence on this. So that's
some argy-bargy on this.
What in fact happened is my view is that the full council in December, by its recommendation, is effectively saying the part of the audit, the Task and Finish group, was that it took the view that Southam should continue to be involved in the Freeport. And as a result of that, they then followed the 17 recommendations. So the recommendation was then put to full council. And if my memory serves me correctly, and I think it's in the minutes, is that Councillor Hodgson put forward an amendment that was effectively said in so many words that this council would either withdraw from the Freeport or would explore withdrawing from the Freeport. I can't remember the exact details, but it's in the minutes. And that amendment was ruled out of order by the monitoring officer because it was in direct opposition to the recommendation that was before members, and therefore it was ruled out. So my interpretation, and it is my interpretation, is that the decision in December effectively endorsed this council continuing with its involvement in the Freeport. That's the position as I see it.
Okay. I mean, you voted against it anyway, Georgina, as did Jackie, I think.
I voted for the recommendations.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's better having the recommendations than not, but it was not my vote. I did not vote.
So yeah, okay. I understand. I think yeah. I mean, we've heard that here in a public meeting that although you felt that the recommendations and the monitoring of it was good, overall you weren't in favour of the Freeport and its project as it is.
Clearly not.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
And some voted against it. I mean, Denise abstained. I understand. I think Alison from our group voted against it.
The three people who voted against the recommendation was Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Allen, and Alison.
Yeah. De Winter. Alison De Winter. Yeah.
And it's recorded in the minutes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Right.
I'm sorry. Can I ask two
yeah, of
other
course.
questions? Then,
Yeah, of
please?
course.
Just with clarification regarding the hydrogen pipe again. So please correct me if my analysis of this is wrong. The government is, as following Chris Brooks's words, giving a grant to Carlton Power in order to build this hydrogen plant, which is public money going to this private company. Instead, then, of having a public benefit from this hydrogen plant in terms of this being given as energy to the people in Plymouth, a private company is now presumably taking this power that this climate hub will generate and taking it to some mines on the west side of Dartmoor. Does this also mean that any private company can also benefit from a government grant to this hydrogen plant and also put in a planning application for hydrogen pipes to go anywhere else? How is this monitored? What are the dangers of having various hydrogen pipes going all over Devon? And also concerns have been raised about the amount of water that will be needed. I'd like that to, as an absolute marker that that's quite a serious ask if you're looking at terms in the futures, particularly around Dartmoor. I just would like to know how this is going to be monitored and that we're kept fully up to date with how many pipes will be coming out of this plant and who is accessing them. Thank you.
Thanks, Georgina. Just to say, look, government giving its money to companies as I mean, it's not 100%. It'll be, it'll be a grant that will be probably match funded. I don't know. I thought you said when you read that out, Chris. When you read that out, you said that that the government had given a grant to Carlton Power.
Well, if I've created any ambiguity, I apologise. So what Carlton Power have done? So they bid for. So the government has a hydrogen strategy, and it's there to be read. And I'm looking at it here. It's on the government's web page. Through their government hydrogen strategy, they ran effectively an auction process, as they do for wind power. And yes, anybody was able to bid for that process. I think they were of the order nationally of about 10 bids. That's my understanding. I think 3 were from Carlton Power nationally, I think. Anyway, one of them is the one that's being discussed today. But what you get if you win is not a government subsidy for the construction of a hydrogen plant. That is entirely funded from private sector funding. So that's the position. Now, the bit where it gets a bit grey is quite how the mechanisms work, but effectively it's an agreement on power. So we remember the price cap that was agreed between the government and France and China at the time building nuclear power stations. It was a national debate. It was expensive. It's exactly the same process. This is how power is procured in this country. I'm not judging it. I'm just saying that's how it works. So that's how the government's hydrogen strategy is deployed across the UK.
Okay, so in effect, it's not direct grant. It's just a guarantee that they'll get the money for that energy. But anyway, what I should say is that's that's outside of our remit, if I'm honest. Pipelines and the planning absolutely aren't.
Yeah.
But again, it's not for this executive to decide on planning issues. That's
no, but clearly, as representatives of the area, it's of concern if there are hydrogen pipes running underneath, and that's the future, which is the thing that I'm interested in. If there is a planning application coming through for a hydrogen pipe,
yeah, that's right, and it will go through. It will go through the planning process.
Yeah, it's just raising.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I get that.
Yeah.
But we must be very careful that we don't suddenly start be prejudicing our position as a council by saying we're against any pipelines.
No, it's literally clarification. That's
So they would go through applications, and that will be discussed, each one on its own merits, and the issues that you raise there about the environmental degradation, the water, all those sorts of things are material planning considerations. John.
Just a brief comment. I mean, there's no point getting excited about hydrogen. It is not going to be the future in a timescale that is anything to do with our lifetimes. The technology is not there for fuel cells yet. And I mean, we had the Totnes High Street dug up for God knows how many months. And that was to put pipes in that were supposedly meant to be compatible with hydrogen. There is a big problem with hydrogen. If you put it down a standard pipe, you get this thing called embrittlement, and they burst and basically probably explode as well. But basically, the whole network would need to be redone. We are not going to get hydrogen in our homes for decades and decades and decades. So I just wouldn't worry about it.
No, it's just things have changed, because that was the original understanding, is that this would go into people's homes. So
Anyway,
just
look,
highlighting that.
I don't
agree
want to
with
get
you, John, but-
drag this whole Freeport thing into hydrogen energy or not, because it's a bit of a red herring if you ask me.
It's the flagship. It was a renewable energy flagship.
It was
that we
how
were
it was sold
was the
to
green
us.
credentials.
It was going to be
Well, there are,
fantastic.
as
we
you
have a
said, I
right
mean,
to
things
ask
evolve
that
and there are
as
other
well.
ideas as well. I mean, there are plenty of other renewable energies. And it wasn't just renewable energy, it was also about high tech and marine investment, all these sorts of things. So it's not just a bust. But I go back to the thing. In 5 years' time, let's see what the Freeport has delivered, and you may well be right, but you may be wrong. And in the same sense that I will say to you, you were right. I hope you will be big enough to turn around to us and go, you know what, you were right. Actually, it's turned out to be a massive benefit and bonus to the South Hams that we have created these industries and the jobs and the high tech things that we wanted. In the thing, so it cuts both ways.
We're literally just clarifying things. Can I do my last clarification? If
Of
that's
course.
Okay. When you talked about government investment in the infrastructure in the South Hams, are we just talking about the roads which link between Langage and Sherford? Sorry. That's right. You're right. Are we just talking about the when you mentioned the Spiny Gap Road? I think they're called.
Yeah. So we're talking about the road and the bridge. I mean,
literally just between the two Freeport sites, because I would argue that those are benefits for the Freeport, not necessarily for South Hams. Are we talking about more? It's just clarification.
No. Clarification is Sherford is the new town at Sherford is 5,500 residential area there, so it'll be a road that's linking that directly to the Langage site as well. So people who work.
Why do they need? Oh, just in terms of workers. From the Langage
workers,
site
and also the bridge, which I think is for cyclists and things like that. So that people who live in Sherford would be able to cycle to work in Langage. So that's what it's about. But also, the problem that we've got is that we've got land that's allocated for employment. And in order for that to be realised, it needs to have a lot of money spent on infrastructure, roads, electric, all these sorts of utilities that needs to be there. So that's what it's doing. So it's basically giving us that money so that the businesses can then move in. So that's what it's about.
I'm genuine.
Sure.
I don't have
okay.
yes or no. It's just for clarification.
Yeah.
And
Thank
may I
you,
just add that is Devon County Council's contribution, not government contribution.
It's both.
That was how they set out their 15 point whatever it was.
Yeah, well, government are giving us 25 million, so some of that is being spent on that stuff. Yeah.
Thank you,
Dan, and then I think Bernard, you wanted to come in, did you? Yeah.
Thank you. Monitoring officer will be reassured to know that I have not had my determination predetermined or otherwise from conversations around what will be a planning application in my ward. I'm the portfolio holder for planning, as you know, Leader, so I'm quite capable of following the scheme of delegation accordingly. And if it goes to planning committee, it will be because there were good planning grounds for it. As an aside, I can reassure members of the executive that my email post box currently contains no comments either for or against any pipes anywhere. But that's just an aside. Going on to the report, 3 questions for clarity, please, on section 1.5, if I may. Little 1 talks about the approval of 200,000 funding for the master plan and delivery strategy for the employment land at Sherford. So just for clarity, does that mean hitherto there hasn't been a master plan and we're working one up? Okay. Sorry, I'm being told not to tap. It's like having my wife next to me. Section 1.5 little 3. I hope that's not taken as a misogynistic comment. It's simply one. It's simply one that is true, actually. Going back to pipes, but different pipes. The pipeline of interest at 1.5.3. Can we just have some clarity, please? I suspect I know the answer, but for clarity, can we have an answer, please, as to when that can be made public? Obviously the business interests. And then 1.5 little 4, the acquisition of land at Sherford and the option update with Babcock, the verbal that's referred to there. Obviously, Babcock, we know, have got the option for the logistics centre. Can we just have an update on where we are with that, with the Babcock relationship, please, and whether there's been any change of use for the land or anything similar around that? I think that would just be really useful on clarity grounds. Thank you, Julian.
Thank you. So there was a vision for the Freeport, and at Langage, which was a very large site, there was, as part of the bid, a master plan worked up. But the bid to government set out that the Sherford land was to be used for the development of an integrated logistics hub. So that was the master plan. Should that not be the case, then yes, we would want to come up with a more detailed plan for the delivery of that site in a way that's compliant with what the Freeport stands for, in a way that works for our local economy and works for this council. So it's a mitigation of a risk that hasn't happened but could happen. So that's what that's about. So the trigger for publicly understanding the pipeline, it essentially at any point, if a company meets the Gateway policy and wants to invest, that will be public stated, there to be seen. At the point where they are interested, they remain confidentially interested. So it's just a matter of fact. If they're going to go there, that's for all the world to see. But at the point where they just say, I might be interested, that's for them to consider privately. And your last question was oh yes, well, I can really only reiterate what Councillor Birch said, which is the two legal agreements which are for the acquisition of the land, but also the option agreement with Babcock. So they don't have an option yet. That point is to have an option prepared that they sign so that we do have it. They're both making very good progress. I'd hope to be able to tell you more, but at this point there is nothing more to add than Councillor Birch set out earlier, I'm afraid.
Can I just add to item little 3 about the potential business, both nationally and internationally? At the Freeport board meetings, we do receive a report that reports back on the interest being shown in the Freeport by those businesses, both nationally and internationally. And as Mr. Brooke mentioned, that dealings with those companies must remain confidential. And as Mr. Brooke quite rightly says, once their interest has been firmed up, and it then enters the public domain. But the point that's being made here is that there is activity, a lot of activity, in seeking to interest businesses, both nationally and internationally, to the Freeport, to make certain, in other words, we're not just sitting there waiting for people to come to the Freeport.
Thank you, John and Chris. Dan. Bernard.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I just listened with interest, but I just want to warn that members that are on your committee are also on DM, and that they're getting very close to predetermining, and that worries me a little bit, to be honest. The outcome of any planning application that might come to DM, which I probably will, you've got to be careful not to come forward in your meeting that they're predetermining, and it sounded a little bit like they were.
Thank you, Bernard. I mean, look, the monitoring officer is sitting here, has heard the debate. I'm sure that if they feel that a line has been crossed there, my own view is that I've heard a lot of people who might be predisposed to something, but nothing's been predetermined as yet. But thank you for that warning, and I think it's well heard. Did you? Yeah. Do you want to send?
Yeah, just to clarify what predetermination and perceived bias is. It's one of those woolly areas that members can only sort of fall into by their own words or actions. So, as the leader was saying, if you say, I am predisposed to be against a particular issue, but I'm going to be listening to both sides of the story, take on board what the public is saying, what other members are saying, read all about it, those sorts of things, that's fine. You can be predisposed towards a particular view, as long as you don't throw yourself headlong into the classic example is, over my dead body will I vote for this in an old case. So you can't go back from that statement at all. So as long as you're keeping your mind open, And I'm reassured by Councillor Thomas's reassurances that he's doing that and will follow the DM rules on delegation and whether it goes to committee. I'm reassured that members have not stepped over that line, but it is for you a matter for members to be aware of when you're speaking, and preface what you're saying with due caution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Bernard. Right, so we've had various questions. We've debated it to some extent. Are there members who feel they want to make comments about the particular? And let's try and stick to the paper. Let's not get into the pros and cons of a free port necessarily, unless there are specifics within this paper that discuss it. I have to say that the new item 3, I think is excellent. I really think that will give a body that is independent of the executive the chance to monitor and scrutinise how it's actually going, and I'm sure that they will probably make recommendations to us at that stage. Georgina, did you want?
Apologies, yes. Can we get some clarity on a timeline by which this goes ahead? It would be very useful to have that.
Timeline on the 17 recommendations going to A&G, you mean, or?
Just the process altogether, just in terms of when things were started, just so there's clarity over the entire process.
Well,
because at the moment it's such an enormous subject. It's so difficult.
Of course. Well, what we do know is that it's reported to executive quarterly.
Yeah.
So we know so with the next quarter, a report like this and progress or not progress will be reported to this executive. I'm not quite sure. And I haven't spoken to the chairman of A&G. I mean, John, you may know more on that.
Can I just say that this is being added to the recommendations following a discussion that I had with the chair of Audit and Governance, and we discussed with the ways of which this could work. It can't be a task and finish group, because the task and finish has to finish. So this is ongoing, and this is why it's a working group. So it's there to deal with what is set out in that recommendation, and it'll be up to Audit and Governance to determine its terms of reference, how often it should meet, etc. It needs to be. This is all in the hands of that committee. So I don't think we want to tie their hands. I think we're saying to them, we want you to continue to monitor the Freeport, and it's up to you as the audit government to determine the best way of going about that through a working group. So I don't think we want to be too prescriptive at this meeting.
Right, it sounds like you're going to get the time. You've got to wait for the A&G, and that's the question to them. Jackie.
I think this idea of a timeline actually is really important, because I think it would, like a Gantt plan, kind of sets out where key decisions have come in and then what's going on, so that we've all got a real clear understanding. And I think it's a lot of it we can actually just fill the boxes already, but I think it would be really useful that we really understand where we are. The other thing I would say is we're being asked to note a reduction in spending today. Absolutely fine. But if we just note a reduction in spending, does that mean we would also be obliged to note an increase in potential spending? I mean, what point are we doing approval?
Well, I think
our next approval is what I'm trying to say, as opposed to just noting.
Yeah, I think the noting is that you're not either for it or against it. You're just noting it. That, I mean, it's a bit of a. It's just so that it's out there, but you're not for or against it. But yeah, obviously, if money's changed, they'll be noted. I mean, if say we had to increase it from 3.5 to 5.5, that is a decision that would probably have to come to full council. So any increase like that, absolutely, and it would come to a vote at full council.
But also, just to say, within the report, there are actually switching around to certain funding for this, and
yeah, but those aren't increases in funding; they're just maybe changing.
When we were actually asked to originally approve the funding for specific things, if then it changes to something slightly different, would we have actually, at this first instance, have approved the funding for those specifics we're now looking at? So I just wonder about the idea of noting, as opposed to just being asked to just give a heads up, because if we're just noting as we go.
Look,
forward,
I don't think we
piece
can.
of power
I think what we're
ourselves.
in danger of doing there would be to micromanaging Freeport and its operations, and I don't think that would be of benefit to anyone at all. I think if there are big material changes in spending, then absolutely we need to know about it. But quite frankly, if they're going to, build a slipway here rather than there, I don't think that should necessarily be something that we would get involved in. John, I don't know if you want to say.
I think, but I presume Councillor Hodgson is referring to the allocation of the seed funding, £25 million. The allocation or reallocation of the seed funding has to go through a process. First of all, it has to be approved by the Freeport board, and then also it needs to have the approval of the government as well. So there is a comprehensive process involved in any reallocation of seed funding. But as you quite rightly say, that is up to the Freeport as to how that money is allocated. It's part of the the function of the Freeport.
Just suggesting, Chairman, we have a scrutiny role. That's all.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, we do, because it will come back to, any changes like that, as indeed they are here in this report, will be reported to this executive on a quarterly basis. So, and if we've got something that we've got real issues about, then absolutely we can raise it at that stage. So, I hope that without saying that we've got to allow everything, we will definitely have a look at it, yeah. Are there any more comments, or shall we move to the recommendations? I mean, 1 and 2 are just noting, but John, are you happy to move all 3?
Yeah, I can't suggest to move all 3.
Yeah, and I'm happy to propose all 3. So could I see those in favour of the 3 recommendations as laid out? Thank you.
That's unanimous.
Yeah.
Thank you, Leader.
Yeah, and Georgina as well. Yeah. Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. And of course this will come back. I do think that much of the legwork now, we've rather neatly moved it over to A&G, and quite rightly they will look at it in an in-depth way and go through the minutiae of each of those 17 recommendations. And of course, all members can attend all committees, and with the discretion of the chairman, can ask questions. So that's good. Right. So let's move on to the next agenda item. Oh no, I've still got the Freeport there. Number 8.
Round 2, John.
Still with us, Nikki? Good. Yeah. Well, we could stop for a cup of tea. Come back. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Come back in 10 minutes. 25 to midday. Yeah.
Oh no, I didn't think at all. It's horrible.
Well done.
Yeah, well done, you, John. That was significantly better than any other report ever.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, are we all here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, I think we're all here. Jackie, 8, yeah. It's Dan. Yeah. All right, excellent. Right, hope you all had a break and a breather. We'll crack on. So, John, you might have had a break, but you're back on again. Agenda item 8, South Hams Festival.
Okay, thank you. Right, this is a hold on, mate. So I'm afraid I'm still on the Freeport report. Can't seem to shake it off. Okay, right. There's the report. I mean, I'm presuming that you've all read the report, so I'll just perhaps again go over the important bits. So, in this proposal for the 2025 festival, with it, in my view, come several benefits. And I think this is what we need to home in on, is that how will this festival or event in 2025 benefit the district? So the first thing, and they're in no particular order, but the first thing is clearly this will bring about a economic development benefit. It will, looking at the results from the earlier Totnes event, the event that took place in 2022, there were clearly economic development or economic benefits for the town. And if this could be, we repeat this throughout South Hams, then clearly there will be benefits there. Secondly, you'll notice that it is proposed that the theme of the festival be a climate change and biodiversity. Now that is a priority area for this council, and I think by undertaking or delivering this festival, then it can certainly raise the profile even further when it comes to climate change and biodiversity. Thirdly, that we as a council, in my opinion, need to pay more attention to an arts and cultural strategy. I think that I don't mind admitting this. I think it's one of our weaknesses, and I think here is an opportunity for us to plug that gap. I think there's an opportunity here for us as a council to develop an art and cultural strategy, bearing in mind that there is a lot of talent in our district, and by bringing them all together through not only a festival but also through a strategy, it's there, it benefits the district. The other benefit is that it will give us an opportunity as a council to have joint activities with our town and parish councils. Clearly, it's important that they are involved throughout. We want to make certain that certainly the 5 towns play an important part, and hopefully we can persuade the parish councils to also not only hold events but also contribute in many ways. I mean, this in itself will not only result in a community engagement, it will also give us a good working relationship with our town and parish councils. And clearly, if at the end of this, and I'm confident that we as a council can make a success of this, it could become an annual event. But let's walk before we start running. So the projected footfall is at over 50,000. The events are planned of over 100, and there will be over 100 artists and performers. You'll see in the report from NDP that the proposed expenditure is 175,000, of which within the proposed budget is a income from district, town and parish councils of 65,000. I'm hoping that within the in preparing for this festival, there will be a substantial contribution coming from the town and parish councils, bearing in mind that they will have sufficient time to include it in their precept for the next financial year. As to the other funding, then it is in the budget proposed that there'll be funding from the Arts Council and other funding bodies of 60,000, box office income 25,000, and sponsorship and local business support of 25,000. Could I just make the point that this is so there is within the recommendation at item 2 is there is a proposal that that there be a underwriting of 32,500. I'm hoping that that contribution, if it is made, could certainly be repaid. Can I also make the point that the economic development team have little or no revenue directly from the council to support its activities? Most of it, or if not all of it, comes from funds that have been raised from other funding bodies. So I don't think it's too much for the economic development team to ask for the 32,500, which hopefully at the end of the day will be reduced with the participation of town and parish councils. So as far as if this recommendation is approved by the committee, the council will be entering into a contract with NDP, whose report is attached to this paper, and there'll be, within that report, we'll make certain that there is regular reports back, and that as and when necessary, I will report back to the executive as to progress and as to the financial position. I think this is a great opportunity for the council, so I do hope that you can support the recommendation. Chris Shears is the author of the report. I don't know whether, Chris, you want to add anything to what I have to say?
I think that's fine.
More than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, John. Jackie.
I'd like to set out by saying I give this a big green welcome. I think it's fantastic. I really do. I think it's really important part of the work that we do, and it's the work that we used to do when I first joined this council in 2011. You know, we used to support Villages in Action, and we suddenly stripped that out, and I think I've always regretted it. East Devon District Council still supports them, so they are still viable. And as I mentioned when we had a conversation about this a week or so ago, I think that we should actually be looking to incorporate them. I would actually add a couple of extra bits. I mean, that would be on the basis of the villages, you know, the rural villages, and, you know, many of which have got really good community halls, which have really suffered during COVID. An opportunity to reintroduce them into that kind of organisation, who are so organised, it wouldn't be, you know, it would just, we just might need to give a bit of seed funding. We used to give, I think, about 12,000. I don't know whether we'd have to give that kind of money now, but I think that would be more inclusive as a project. I'd also like to say that I just want to make sure that we ensure there are actual events for young people that are really not about, you know, the usual grey hair brigade, but actually, you know, people, you know, much more dynamic stuff, the sort of stuff I probably wouldn't dream of going to, that go no music. Lovely, they love it.
No music.
That's right. That's what I tell it's my son, but anyway, which he doesn't approve of at all. But I just think we need to bear in mind that there's stuff for youngsters, you know, maybe a young people festival or something, because they really are interested in some of the, you know, the climate and biodiversity stuff. So there's you know, an open door. But the other thing I do think we ought to do, and this is no reflection on Mr. Shears at all, but I do think we might need to employ a particular person to actually be the go-to during this, so that within NDP and somebody who is used to doing arts events. I know NDP are themselves are kind of organising all this, but I think we might need to have somebody in between. Certainly, the experience at Totnes Town Council when they do kind of the annual Christmas markets is to employ somebody who just oversees it, who knows what they're doing, is familiar, knows all the people, knows all the kind of things that happen when you're doing art stuff, which could actually weave it in really well. And the other thing I was going to say was, I think we ought to be thinking about a crowd to help the towns and parishes that we might be looking to raise money towards this. It might be useful to maybe sort of have some way of helping them organise crowdfunders between them, either a collective one for this that they all find ways to contribute to, or that they have ones individually. But that's where a lot of people suddenly get floored when we all think, oh, everybody does that. Sometimes for town and parish councils, it's not as easy as some people think it is. So that's what I'm saying. Those are the points I would just suggest to make this kind of really get off the ground well. And certainly making sure pound parishes know sooner rather than later, because although their precepts for next year would be determined to come towards the end of this year, they won't actually kick in till April, and it may well be that deposits and agreements need to be made well in advance of that to make sure that we've got surety around this. Those are just the points I want to make.
Thank you, Jackie. John, and then I'll come to you, Georgina.
Sorry, I was away with the fairies. I think this is a fantastic project. I mean, I was thinking about something along these lines as part of, in the climate change and biodiversity context, and then John came up with this, so I don't have to think about it anymore, which is wonderful. And but I just think it's a huge opportunity. I think I said this once before. The one thing that, reading through that report, that I was a bit disappointed not to see was any kind of legacy art that might come from this, sort of urban art that is just there in perpetuity, that will remind people as they walk past it about the problems of climate change and biodiversity, make them think about it more, but at the same time brighten up some areas of towns with some nice art that is just there. And there doesn't seem to be anything in this. It's all a bit, it seems to be a bit ephemeral. It'll be a wonderful few days and then it's gone. And it would be nice if there was something left over after that. And I agree with John about the long-term thing of having an arts strategy for the council. I mean, this is a first step in that direction, and it would be great to see something like that developed. Maybe we should have an arts and an arts officer to sit alongside the marine officer and the food and agricultural officer that we're going to get. That will cover the full gamut. Anyway, I think that's it. I think it's a wonderful idea, and it certainly has my support.
Thank you, John. Georgina.
Thank you very much, and I'd also like to thank John Birch for driving this, because it looks remarkable. I just want to say that I was involved in a small capacity in the Totnes Festival, which was run by the same organisation, of course, and it was quite remarkable, to be honest with you, because it succeeded in the almost impossible task of uniting Totnes after the pandemic. It was a real milestone, I think, in Totnes, where we had it was a sort of a wonderful couple of days. We all came out of it a better town, I would say. Didn't last long, but at the time it was fantastic. And also just to support John's point about a lasting legacy to it, there was a lot of conversation at the time about during the Totnes Festival about putting up or trying to get some artists in town to paint murals alongside the building. It didn't happen. There were certain reasons it didn't happen. But it would have been wonderful. I regret that it didn't happen, because I absolutely agree with that. It's a sort of, making a point about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Georgina. Denise.
Thank you. Agree that it's this is a great idea, and in fact I saw the Globe Theatre production of Julius Caesar in 2022. I thought it was fabulous at Dartington. It was great to have London. Really good London production down here in the South Hams. It was really well attended. It was absolutely fantastic. And an art officer, art strategy is an excellent idea. I mean, government funding for the arts is, let's say, not optimal. So the arts needs all the help it can get. More lasting art, great idea. In Kingsbridge, my ward, they already have. They're trying to get some murals put up. So they're already on it there. But it would be good to get that as a thread running through the district and help and support towns and parishes who try to do things like that. Get a few Bankses perhaps. The more cutting edge areas, whatever. Also, the Villages in Action, yeah, I remember them being supported. I think it's great for the rural areas to have these touring productions they have, don't they? They go around the village halls. And I think it would be good to support organisation like that in the same way that we support the Sustainable South Hams, for example, that the sort of organisations which really run through our district and our rural areas and help support them in more ways than one. And also just recently we've had individual councillors, others may have been asked as well as me, for support individually for the Arts Trail, for example. Is it the South Hams Arts Fund? Which is another thing that happens around the district. And it's a shame that they're having to ask individual. It would be nice if perhaps we could support them more centrally as well, just organisations like that who provide these sort of things, put a lot of hard work in year after year, that we can support them, perhaps as I say, more centrally. So yeah, this is a really good idea, and the arts can uplift our communities, even in pretty tricky times like this. So it's excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. I've got Dan and Nikki and Sam. So, Dan.
On the very last point that Councillor Callahan's just made, you'll be glad to know that it came to me as well, and I've asked Mr Hawke to set a meeting up from my community engagement hat, because I think absolutely that comes on quite nicely to one of my questions, which is that I support this entirely. I think it's an excellent idea. I'd like to know how we're going to deal with the cost centres in terms of underwriting the festival, taking the point that Councillor Birch has made about how the economic team don't have a budget specifically. Therefore, we're clearly going to have to find this from other cost centres. I'm responsible for a budget under community engagement. I don't particularly want to blow all of it in, or virtually all of it in on one project, however noble it is, because I think we need to consider what's going on in terms of other projects as well. So my first question is how are we going to actually, apportion internally against our budgeting, how we're going to pay for this. My second question is, and I've already spoken to Councillor Birch off record, but I'd like this on record. My support is conditional only in the sense that this has to truly be South Hams wide. And for that to be the case, reference to things like the opening and closing ceremonies, I think it currently says we would decide the festival opening and closing ceremonies will be held in locations to be decided with festival partners and the community. I would want to see a commitment, an absolute commitment that, yeah, of course Totnes might have one of those, but I certainly don't want it having both of them, because I think that sends the wrong message out. I think that's really important. And then my other question is, and I apologise if I'm stealing your thunder on this one, because I think you might make it as well, but I think it's a really important one, which is those of us who live further away, who haven't seen the benefits of this, are probably more sceptical as to the chances of raising significant funds from parish councils. And I think we need to think very carefully about how we go about convincing parishes that there is a tangible benefit. And we know what the benefits are in terms of mental health and community spirit and everything else. I'm not suggesting there aren't brilliant benefits, but I think, for that figure to be less than that, because we've upped the funding from those other bodies, I think there needs to be now, whether that means that what's being suggested in terms of officer support is correct. I don't know how proficient Mr. Shears you are in this area, and I don't wish to presume that you're not. I don't know, but certainly, when it comes to setting up the support in principle for a festival, that's quite a a subject specific game, and I think one we need to give a lot of thought about. And my last question is, what happens, if we don't raise that money?
Do you want to answer that specific one, John?
I think there's several questions in there. I'll try and remember what they are, but I made a note here. In no particular order, I think as far as the funding is concerned and as to where it comes from, etc. I did discuss this with Mrs. Buckle, and perhaps she could respond on that. So that after I've answered the other questions. As far as what I would call then the outlying parishes, then what is going to be crucial in the success of this festival is ensuring that it's not just the council who are driving it forward along with NDP, but I think it also has to be local members as well. I think a lot of it will depend on the enthusiasm and the drive of local members. And I think the way that I would like to see this happening is that I would be more than happy to go to town and parish councils along with local members to ensure that it's an all-round event and not just falls on the shoulders of a few. So I certainly look forward to coming to your parish council, Councillor Thomas. So, and I know you'll be there. That deals with that point. I think this very much depends on us as an executive ensuring that we take all our members on board and get them involved. So as on the matter of the start and finish ceremonies, and as I explained to you earlier this week, the position is this, as things stand at the moment, then it's open to the town councils, the 5 town councils, to come up with proposals in respect of the opening and closing ceremonies. In other words, it's what other towns got to offer that will make this really a big event. And it will not just be Totnes, it will be the responsibility of us and the town councils working together to come up with an event that will get it off to a good start, and also an event that will be a successful conclusion. And I think it's important that the closing and the opening and the closing ceremony are not the same town. And I think that all start on an equal footing with all towns. And the fact that I'm a member of Totnes, it shouldn't be taken that that Totnes will be part of it. I think it is a level playing field. I think I've answered most of your questions with the exception of the financial part. So perhaps I could ask Mrs. Buckle if she could assist me in that respect.
Yeah, Lisa, and also the point that Dan also raised is that at what point do we decide that we're not going to raise enough money, and how does that work? Yeah, I think that 1.7 has been pointed out, but yeah, Lisa, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. So as the festival would be in the summer of 2025, this would be a potential cost that would fall in the 25-26 financial year. As recommendation sets out there, members are being asked today to agree that the funding would need to be found from the Year 2 delivery plan allocation. So members will be aware that when we were looking at potential funding for the council plan and the next 3 financial years of the council plan, 2.5 million has been freed up for that from a review of earmarked reserves, also a review of the capital programme. And members will be aware that we've already allocated £1 million of that as part of the 24-25 delivery plan allocation. So if members were to approve this today, that £32,500 would be an ask to the year 2 delivery plan allocation. So that would be for next year's council plan and next year's delivery plan for the 25-26 financial year. And what we would do is, if that was approved by members, we'd set up a new cost centre for the council plan under the banner of economic delivery. And within the report in 1.7, it does say that the project spend profile needs to be developed and shared, and there will be financial monitoring of the spend against the agreed budget. So we will very much monitor this as it goes along. And recommendation 2 says that there is an anticipation of a minimum of 50% of the funding being secured through local partners. Thank you.
Thank you, Lise.
Can I just come back then?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah. Okay. Replies in both directions. Councillor Birch, thank you for your kind offer. I will, of course, be at Yampton Parish Council, where I am a parish councillor, but I would hope that we can carry the message from you. My point was rather, please make sure we have the message to carry, rather than I expect you, Councillor Birch, to go to 59 parish council meetings. I can assure you I go to 13 a month, and that is already quite enough without going to 59. Mrs Buckle, thank you very much. On 1.7, I did read that, but that is unusually unspecific, if I might suggest, from the finance team, and so that's why I asked. Does it follow that we will give 30? 32 is the cut off, and if they don't raise the other, then that's where it would kick in. Is that my understanding?
So if I can help, Chairman, I think 1.7 is pretty specific. It says that in the autumn we will make a decision on a go, no go. That is very specific, and that will be based on the development of the programme and the funding of the programme. So the recommendation you have at the moment is to underwrite it up to the value of 32,500. That provides time for the conversation to take place, as Councillor Birch has set out. Hopefully we will be successful. We will secure approval from towns and parishes to fund it. That will then be the point at which time you'll be able to make a decision to proceed. Where specifically is allocated within the Year 2 delivery programme will be a matter for the executive as you develop your spending plans. Does that help?
It does help. Thank you.
John, if it's on that specific, otherwise I've got Nikki and Sam who are going to come in.
I just wanted to. I mean, given the theme of this festival is going to be climate change and biodiversity, it would be a bit churlish if some of the monies for this did not come out of the budget for climate change and biodiversity. So I would certainly think that at some point we ought to think about how much and etc.
Thank you.
I wasn't brave enough to suggest that, but I had thought about it.
Oh, thank you, John, and I think you're right about that.
Can I just make a final point whilst I've got the red light? Is that one of the things that I'm trying to do is promote markets in all the towns, and we've got a meeting just after this to talk about that. That fits in very well with this as sort of the idea of a festival, and I think we ought to be using the markets as a way of promoting as venues, and it would really help to also push that as a project along.
No, excellent. Thank you, John. Nikki.
Thank you. So I've got lots of questions and comments in no particular order, so you'll have to bear with me. But I think on the funding part, my issue is 1.4. The total funding gap could be as high as 65,000. The council is recommended to underwrite up to 32,000. Like Dan, if we don't get the other 32,000, I don't know what will happen. And why that's confused even more is because in Appendix A, at the, just bear with me, sorry, because I'm not going to do this first, where it says the budget overview, the page after, no, not that page. Bear with me, please. There's a program there there's a timeline there of when things. Oh, I'm looking at the flipping Freeport. No wonder I can't find it. Sorry, God. there's a timeline there for actions. The chief executive has just said to us that the crunch time will be in the autumn. I think you've just said whether we proceed or not. My concern is that if you have a look at the timeline, in October, we've made no commitment either way. They are going to recruit producers and marketing team, which is going to cost them a lot of money. In November, the producers and marketing will be in post, so they'll be interviewed in October to start in November. The Arts Council bid won't be until November, so none of that makes sense to me, because I was going to say something about face, but I'll think of another way of putting it. It's all the wrong way round. So we are going to make a decision in the autumn, September, October time. Don't know when you say autumn is. Recruitment of marketing team is October, when they've got no money. The Arts Council submission not going in till November, so you don't even know if that will start. Also, going back to somewhere in here I've read, here it is, what's on offer. They are looking for 5 associate curators working across Theatre Circus, and they're going to give them between £500 and £1,500 to develop a piece of work, but they've got no money. And they've definitely got no money, because I've looked at their company accounts and they're over 20,000 in debt. So they can't pull on any of their money to give that money. So I think that part of it doesn't make sense to me at the moment. I am not against this event happening. Let me make that very, very clear. I'm not against it. I just don't think the budgeting side has been properly looked at by the company. And the one thing that the caveat I do have for saying I'm not against it is I am really worried about the volunteer network we have in the South Hams at the moment that delivers programmes with a volunteer group. I know particularly in Kingsbridge, there are lots of things that happen through the summer months that are all delivered by volunteer groups. But here you're talking a staffing cost of £95,000+ for between 6 and 10 months' work. So this isn't a volunteer organisation doing this. This is a properly set up business organisation. They haven't even got a charity number, so they're not doing it charitably either. They're definitely not making money. But we need to look closer at the makeup of the company and the money they're offering before they've started. And the volunteers, I'd be really miffed if I was a volunteer organisation in the South Hams and this group were coming to me to say, will you join us in our festival, but you're all volunteers and we're getting paid to put it on, because the volunteers have been doing this forever anyway. I don't know if I'm making sense, but I know what I mean. Also, in the Totnes Festival, Totnes is a fantastic hub for this type of thing. Absolutely incredible, and always has been. The diversity within Totnes allows for arts to be very, very well put on, and they always do. But at the Totnes event, which was a 10-week event, I think it was, a 10-day event, the company expenses for this event were £110,000, the budget. For a 3-week event across the whole of the South Hams, the budget is only £65,000 more. So that, to me, means that the budgeting may not have been thought out as well as it should be, because if you're delivering in Totnes for 110 in one small area of the South Hams, and then you're looking at the whole of the South Hams, and that's going to be another 65,000, the sums don't quite add up. Local members, volunteers. the volunteers in the outlying areas who have these events, I'm really worried that if someone comes to them and says, oh, I think I've said that. No, I've said that. Blonde moment. Economic development, I think absolutely the economic development benefits of it could be significant. So that's a positive for it. Theme of the festival, climate change and biodiversity, another positive. Arts and culture is definitely a weakness of this council, so that's another positive. The precept from towns and parish councils. What is worrying me is, again, the chief executive said to us, we will make a decision in September, October time as to whether we will go forward. But we're asking towns and parish councils for the money, which they won't be able to give us till next, whenever they receive a precept, April, May, and they'll precept around December, January time. They may change their mind in December. They may come to their precepts in December, January and say, actually, that £1,000 we promised, we just can't do because money is so tight because we are in a cost of living crisis and, you know, the grass cutting's gone up. So we'd rather put the £1,000 to the grass cutting for the residents for next year. That's my concern. None of this is being done with proper timelines. That concerns me.
Thank you, Nikki. I mean, do you want to reply to some of those, John? Yeah. Thank you, Nikki. I think they'll, all.
Okay. There could be 101 reasons why we shouldn't go ahead with this, and you've probably given about 50. But I mean, it's whether we want to, everything that's carried out in this council has an element of risk to it. I mean, I remember under the previous administration, we went and did projects, and I think in one case it cost this council a lot of money, but I won't go back to that. So, so the point is this: can I just say what you need to bear in mind is that on the timelines, really it doesn't start until probably June, July, August. Now, the position is this, is that if this committee give the go-ahead for this, then one of the first things that Chris and I will do is we'll be meeting with NDP to iron out the issues that you've raised, etc. I mean, the two of us will not want to put the council at risk. The point is this: you're getting into the details of how this festival should be organised or run. The purpose of this paper that comes before this executive is to set out in principle whether or not we as a council wish to go ahead. What I wouldn't want to have done is to sat down and go into great detail with NDP about this, that and the other, and come to this committee and the committee say, go and take a run and jump, because that would have been a complete waste of time. So the point is this is saying to this executive, do you approve this in principle, so that we can go away and come to an agreement, hopefully come to some agreement with NDP, and they enter into a contract which addresses the issues, several of the issues that you've raised. So what this executive is being asked to do is to approve this in principle, and that we go away and sort out the details. And that's the important thing, is if the council doesn't want to do it, then so be it. Then no further time need be taken. But it seems to me that the majority of this committee want to see this happen. We'll make it happen, but in making it happen, we'll make certain that the risks are minimised and that the issues that you have raised and what other members have raised will be addressed. And one of the things that I think we ought to be thinking about is that not only will we be entering into discussions with NDP and coming up with a contract, but also we have a one-off session where NDP and meet with all the members of this council to not only do a presentation as to what's going to be happening and take on board the points that have been raised during this meeting. I mean, Jackie came up with some very valuable points that need to be addressed, but there will be a forum for us to deal with that. because, as I said earlier, it's important that we get all the members on board and get them to be positive about this. So, the issues that you've raised will be addressed. Will not be going into this where the council is at risk when it comes to funding.
Of course, Nikki. Yeah.
Sorry, let me make it very clear. I am not against this project. But you're saying we're not going into the details of the festival. The details of the festival are in front of us. The details of they've detailed their timeline, and I'm saying their timeline doesn't work. So that's what we're here for as members. So I'm only saying their timeline doesn't work with regards to our timeline. So that's what needs ironing out. And I was going to say this morning at the Freeport how lovely again it is for you to be on board, and will you be saying thank you to, will you be saying to us, you got it wrong, you should have been on board from the very beginning? But I don't go back. So please don't go back.
All right, Nick.
Hang on, I haven't finished yet. I welcome a meeting with MDP, and I welcome the fact that we will get a detailed discussion with them, because I think we need one. But I am not against the project, and I think my colleague, Councillor Dennis, has got got a very valid point to make, but I'll leave that to her. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. Sam, actually you've been name checked there.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Birch, actually, for kind of helping me shape what I want to say, because fundamentally, in principle, I completely support this. I'm a massive advocate for events. As Chairman and various other people will know, I've been involved in been one of those volunteers that organises a lot of events in the local area. So not wanting to go into the details, of which I do have lots of questions and comments and constructive suggestions, as part of these recommendations, are you agreeing to specifically speak to NDP to the exclusion of any other event organisers? Because in the report it recognises that this would represent a significant upscaling of what they have done before, and you also acknowledge that other event organisations will be displeased that they've not been given the opportunity. So how does this fit in with the scheme of delegation? Have 3 other companies been approached, or is the executive making an exemption to that power of delegation on the basis that, what's the reasoning for going to that one company?
The reason behind this is that, first of all, there are no other organisations that have approached this council with such a proposal. And I'm not aware of any organisation that would be willing to take this on. So the position is that I started discussions with NDP in September last year. By way of background, they wanted to run a festival in Totnes, and they approached me in September because they were looking for funding. And I actually said to them, there is no way will this council just give funding to run the Totnes festival. The only chance that you will get is by having a festival in South Hams, not just Totnes. As a result of that, there were discussions, and it developed along the way. What their original idea that they came up with has been changed, etc., etc. The point is this: there's been a lot of time and effort put into bringing this before the executive. What the executive is not being asked to do, it is not being asked in this recommendation to approve the report and recommendations of NDP. And it goes back to what I said a moment ago. As far as the details are concerned and making certain it works for this council, that was the subject of discussions and coming to some agreement with NDP. So, it is the area of whether or not we as a council should have invited other organisations to put forward a proposal. Well, as I mentioned a moment ago, I don't believe there are other organisations within South Hams who can do that. I may be wrong, but they certainly haven't come forward. And I've been, I mean, I've been on this council for a few years now, probably too long, but I can't recall any organisations approaching this council saying that they'd like to run a South Hams festival. So, you know, there's an opportunity here to work with an organisation that have experience in this field, and I think it's an opportunity that we as a council should take up and run with it.
Thank you, John. Jonathan.
You would have been pleased to know I wasn't having any intention of talking today at all. I have to declare an interest because I'm a member of the Port of Dartmouth Royal Regatta Committee, and I have been on that committee since I was 16, which is only 2 years ago. We have got a fantastic group of festivals across the South Hams, an amazing group. Port of Dartmouth Royal Regatta obviously is the best one, but we have Kingsbridge Fair Week in Kingsbridge. Iverbridge has events, Totnes has events, and I'm old enough to remember when South Hams District Council had a fantastic tourist department with employed staff that did an amazing job for the residents of the South Hams and for our businesses. That was in the golden days of councils. The only concern I have got is that shouldn't we have actually gone to our festivals first of all, who are all volunteers and who are all struggling, because they are all struggling under the cost of living crisis and all the other things that are happening. Events are slowly but surely either dying or getting less and less because of funding, insurance, health and safety, risk assessments, all this kind of stuff. And I really do support the idea of a Festival of the South Hams. I think that's a fabulous idea, and I really would welcome it, and do welcome it. But would it not have been a little bit better to have actually gone to all those festivals that we've got and said, what do you think? Let's have a meeting here at Follerton House. Let's discuss it. And how could you input into a festival? Because there's a huge amount of expertise out there. And my other concern I've got is that because sponsors are very tight these days, you know, there's only a few that can actually help reasonably and sensibly to an event. Are we not spreading that across? So I would have thought it would have been better to have had an officer that perhaps does work part-time or whatever for the council to actually go out with these festivals and say, how can we help you create a festival of the South Hams? So I think we've sort of gone the wrong way around it, but I think the idea is a great idea.
Thank you.
Can I answer? Yeah. Please? The point is this: there are other organisations throughout the district who have experience and have got a good record when it comes to running festivals. There's no reason why we shouldn't include them in this festival. In fact, is that we will be reaching out to other towns and other festival organisers, and so it's not a closed shop. We are reaching out, and that's number one. And number two, what we need to bear in mind is that this activity is not in the council's plan, and therefore it is an addition to what is there. There are, as far as the economic development team are concerned, they are working their socks off at the moment, and therefore we as an organisation, to make this work, need to rely on a company that's got experience and a good record. So as far as getting an officer involved to organise that, we don't have the capacity. It's not in the council's plan. This is an opportunity to us as a council to come up, not only put on a successful event, but also to develop this art and cultural strategy. So we need to bear that in mind. So there are challenges, but I mean, as a council, let's rise to the challenge. And I just look forward to working closely with you on that, Jonathan, using your experience in Dartmouth.
The only thing I would come back about that is that when volunteers are on committees and spend tens of hundreds of hours working away for nothing, they then see perhaps, and it might not be this case because I'm not really criticising too much, but if somebody is employed as an outside body, then that is going to upset them, I think, or could.
Yeah, no, fair point. Jackie, and then Sam, although I do know you wanted to come back, Sam, anyway, but Jackie.
Yeah, I think I hear what people say, and I know that there is always this opportunity for people to kind of feel, as outliers, a bit miffed. Oh, well, we've been doing it for years. Why aren't we involved in this? I think this is something different, and I think what this is actually providing is kind of a skeleton that others can get involved with. I mean, it's a substantial backbone, as it were, to an event. So it's holding the dates, it's coordinating that sort of inclusivity. But I think there's nothing to stop, and I don't hear that there is anything to stop others getting involved. People who want to perhaps be self-funding, people that are already doing things, they go, okay, well, let's see if we can maybe weave our dates to be a bit closer, so it's all part of that hype, or maybe actually we want to avoid it so that we don't actually lose all the people that normally come to our thing going to that as well. So I think as long as, the fact we're sort of advancing ourselves date-wise, I think there's an opportunity to be out there. I definitely think we need to contact all the towns and parishes ASAP. And I would say, a document, not necessarily, John, yourself having to kind of struggle to go to 59 meetings, because at the best that would be 2 months, more likely 6 months. It's better to, I think, to send something out as a consultation saying that this is our proposal, this is what is on offer, and just invite people to kind of fill in boxes. What do you do at these times? What can you offer? Are you interested in raising funds? Do you have particular groups that you'd like us to contact in your area? So setting it out, inviting that inclusivity, and making no promises, but saying we're trying to just get a real picture of what people would like to see as part of this. Because I think that, people who could self-fund into this with their already events will just actually build it locally. So it's, but it means that we don't have to take overall responsibility for all of that, but we should definitely be mindful of it. But one thing I would say is about trying to say that there'll be a big opening and a big closing event in one area. Can you imagine the traffic? I mean, it's like, I just feel there's a real opportunity maybe to have 5 openings and maybe 1 closing, or the other way round. But because you could, there could be things. I mean, when I was age 11, we did a big Oxfam walk. We walked from all corners of London into Wembley Stadium. Thousands of people are involved in that. It was a 44-mile walk. It was, well, anyway, I won't go into the detail, but I didn't feel very well afterwards, and I certainly didn't walk for a fortnight. But it was, there was things like that going on, and they split the group, so you actually had a big event at the end. But you could do, there's ways of doing that, but I think it's, at the moment, I think we need to try and just make sure that everybody knows about it. Everybody has an opportunity to say something about it in that wider community and put their suggestions, because there may be some things that are really useful in there that help us shape what we're doing. But I certainly think it should be really clear that we're able to only offer a certain thing. But also just to bear in mind that, I mean, one of the outcomes of, the document we've got in front of us from NDP themselves around Totnes, because don't forget, Totnes Festival wasn't the first time they did anything. They did a fantastic thing for Halloween in 2020 in COVID, which was absolutely amazing. It was it was completely wild and involved the church sprinkling water all over people. I mean, there was all sorts of strange things and people dressing up as angels in the church, but as well as all other things going on as part of it. But what I'm saying is, so can I just say, I think we need to bear in mind that this is perhaps a pilot.
Yeah,
That we should think about maybe looking as a legacy is a couple more beyond it. So we actually think maybe a 3-year programme, which is when you.
Well, no, we're not. That's not what the recommendations are. I bear that in mind. I think we can hold that thought. Sam.
Thank you. I don't know if it's just worth making an amendment to these recommendations. I'm not sure how to do that, but I can entirely support what Jackie was suggesting there about a consultation, and importantly, not just with the town and parish councils, as has been said a lot of times, but with the event organisers, because it isn't the town and parish councils that organise a lot of the events in the villages across the rest of the South Hams. But also, I'd be really keen, actually, to see other event organisers to come up with their take on it, and they don't have to necessarily be from the South Hams. It says contracts of a value over 25,000, free written quotation should be sought wherever possible. 1 should be based in the council's area. So we've already got that 1. But it strikes me that you say they're experienced. I mean, I don't know the company, but they've only existed since 2019. And they, by their own admission, they haven't ever organised an event outside of the one town area, across the district like this. So I'd be really keen to explore the option of other event organisers as well, just to make sure that this was the right company to be contracting.
Did Sam? I've seen Sam Penfold sort of pop in and out on the screen. I don't know if you wanted to say anything. Or no? No, okay.
No, sorry, that's a complete accident. Apologies.
All right, well, it was nice to see you anyway, Sam. Georgina.
Yes, just two answers, just from my knowledge of NDP. They've existed much longer than 2019. They were a company that mostly worked overseas. I think they worked in refugee camps, and they've got a long history. I can have a chat with the founding member, but also just to say, in the festival that they did in Totnes, I think the key thing for me always was the collaborative nature that they had with all the volunteer groups in town. So, for example, they worked with the rugby club really closely. So they had a big event on Borough Park where the rugby club helped put it on. And so all these different volunteer groups in Totnes all got together behind, as Jackie was saying, the skeleton of it, and put on their own events within this sort of the bigger umbrella. And I think that was the key to its success, actually. I think NDP brought the imagination and the interesting and the showmanship, but all the volunteer groups had an opportunity to get involved, and including us.
That's
So,
reassuring.
thank you.
Victor, and then Nikki. I'm going to be last because I want to bring this to a close. I think we've had a good discussion. Victor.
Thank you. It's interesting to see that the initiatives are being suggested now after this current initiative has been put forward, and there's been plenty of years where other people could have come up with initiatives. We've got something we can run with, and it isn't being exclusionary. If people want to come up with local contributions to this scheme, and there are experienced people around the place that can offer this, there is a method by which that it can happen within this idea. I just think this is worth going for, and let people make their contributions as we go ahead.
Thank you, Vic. Nikki. No, you finished. Okay, right. I'll just say a few things myself. I think it's a fantastic idea, and I think it is acting as a catalyst. And we don't want to conflate the two ideas as that this is the culture and art strategy. This is kicking that off. And I notice in the report, Chris is talking about working with the LGA, and they may well facilitate the kind of meetings that we were talking about, where all the festival people come together and tell us the best way to carry out a strategy. But I do think this is a start, and quite frankly, I don't think it'll work if all the volunteer groups don't get involved and want to work with them. And if it will flop if that doesn't happen. I think I would say that gently. I thought your idea of crowdfunding, and I hope that's something we look forward to, and NDP might want to do that, because not only parishes and towns, there may be individuals who think that it's a wonderful idea. And look, when times are tight, and Nikki always talks about the cost of living crisis, there may be individuals who feel that this is something that's worth supporting, and that would give them an opportunity to do it. Look, I get what Nikki's saying about the funding and the thing. What would be interesting is actually, we've got the timeline of activities, but it'd be good to have the spend timeline is there, because I think what Nikki's saying is, we need to, it's there in 1.7, but it's not there in the paper here. So we need to know how much they're going to spend by the time that we might pull the plug, and we may already be in for it. And I think if we agree these recommendations now, we're not signing a blank check. We've said at the very worst case scenario, we've agreed 32,500, and that's to come out of not this year's budget, but next year's budget. And I think John's volunteered most of that. No, John, I'm only kidding.
Say one thing. I mean, throughout this whole discussion, I mean, clearly, I've got every faith that John will bring to this exec and whoever needs to look at it a decent business plan that basically lays out the timeline, the costs, and where the money's coming from. I mean, like any project, it needs a business plan. So, and I'm sure that is what will be presented in due course.
Absolutely. But I think a lot of the things about the art legacy, the murals, will come out of our culture and art strategy. But the warning that John said about our team is that we are at full capacity, and in a way, what we're doing here is that 32,500 I see it is almost outsourcing to NDP how we want to develop that arts, and they will act as a catalyst there. So. I mean, Jonathan, you talked about maybe we should employ an officer part-time or whatever. I mean, that would cost nearly that amount anyway. So So actually,
it was from your discussion that you
Yeah.
were thinking that in the future.
Yeah. But so anyway, I mean, I very much hope that we'll support this. I appreciate there are a lot of risks involved, and as we saw with the festival that collapsed in Torbay, I think it was, it cost the council a lot of money and absolutely nothing happened. And so I think Nikki's absolutely right to raise those financial concerns, but in the end, we're only, this is relatively speaking, and I appreciate, it's all taxpayers' money, so we need to be careful with it. But there is not a massive financial risk in that sense. Nikki.
Yeah, could I, looking at point 2 of the recommendation, I just think that needs tightening up a bit. In anticipation of a minimum of 50% of the funding being secured by partners, 50% of what funding? The council, the 65,000 or the 195,000? That needs to be clear. That's not clear.
Okay, I mean, my understanding of it is the 65,000.
It may well be your understanding. It's my understanding of it, but
Yeah, okay.
that isn't clear.
Of the six, there it is. Very helpfully, Daryl has. That's it by magic. Yeah. So that's there. So anyway, look, I think we've debated it a lot. I think it's an exciting project, and if it comes off, it would be fantastic. But we should all be realistic that it may fall flat on its face, and that would be a shame. But I think it's a challenge. It is a challenge, and it's a risk. But I think it's a risk and a challenge worth taking. Is my view. So John, are you happy to propose the recommendation? Yeah, and can I have a seconder for that? Thanks, Jackie. So all those in favour of those recommendations, that's on the screen. Thank you. Those against? Any abstentions?
That's 7 in favour, 1 abstention, Chair.
Lovely. Thank you all very much. Right. Well done. I think it's going to be great. I mean, I've got a lot of confidence in them. Anyway, so now agenda item 9, isn't it? It's housing. Yeah.
Yes.
Denise. If you've got to do that, you go do that, Denise, and John. If we go to item 10, and you do your, unless you need to go to the loo as well.
So you want me to kick off?
Yeah. Are you okay with that? Are you okay with that, John?
Well, I'm okay.
All right. Okay. No, Denise, crack on. So this will be a short verbal report, I presume.
Putting the mic on. Start off by a report by Shelter out today, you may or may not have seen, saying that with private rentals, there have been 830,000 unwanted moves by private renters across England over the past year. That's 40% of renters who move house are doing so because they've had to. They didn't want to. So it's costing them money on top of, high private rentals, which are in short supply, as we know. So an unwanted move is either a fixed term tenancy coming to an end, tenants priced out by a rent increase, served an eviction notice, or informally asked to leave by the landlord. So that's a sad state of affairs. And on top of that, one of those issues being evicted without fault, which is section 21. That's the Renters Reform Bill is meant to tackle that, and that was in the government's manifesto in 2019. 5-year term of Parliament ends in a few months, and that's still not been brought into legislation, which is really not good enough. We have a lot of private renters, and they don't have that security which was promised to them back in 2019. And I have to say, our MP, Mr. Mangnall, is the one who is tabling the amendments which have been holding this up. I'm sure he has some good reasons, but I mean, a chunk of the MPs who are not including Mr. Mangamo, who are trying to get this changed, are landlords themselves. And so they have an interest in this. And I think it's a long time to wait for this important bill to go through. And I just wanted to highlight that nationally, and obviously its impacts on us, our residents in the South Hams as well. I mean, on the plus side, the local housing allowance for private renters this month has gone up. It had been frozen for 5 years, so low-income private renters do have that on the positive side. And just to perhaps focus on homelessness, temporary accommodation for this update. So we don't have a report, as you can see. So just to give you an update on temporary accommodation, which continues to be a challenge for us. And we are being proactive, you'll be pleased to hear, in tackling that with the recent property purchases that we've made of flats and houses around the district, reducing reliance on bed and breakfast accommodation, which is pay nightly. Facts and figures, there are currently in the South Hams 33 householders who are in temporary accommodation, 4 families, the rest are single people, 8 care leavers. There has been a rise in single people with complex needs. That figure of 33 households has actually gone down from 37, so that's something anyway. But you don't want anyone in that situation, really, ideally. Some of those people are in bed and breakfast, but none of the families are, to be clear. The cost has risen for the council of temporary accommodation, along with other councils who have housing responsibility across the country, although we're not as badly off as a lot of councils who have this pressure. I mentioned the LHA, which has gone up for private renters. Sadly, the housing benefits subsidy, which the council can claim for temporary accommodation, has not gone up for reasons best known to the Chancellor since 2019. So that is increasing our cost pressures. So the cost of temporary accommodation as a percentage of net revenue budget is projected to be 4% for the 23-24 financial year. The figure is 0.73 million for the cost. Now, comparing that back in 2019 to 20, it was 0.2 million and was only 1% of the budget. So you can see the rising costs over the last 5 years or so. And in Devon Home Choice, bands A to D, which are the bands of people most in need of housing, 880 households on the waiting list. And interestingly, 60% of those are in need of 1-bed accommodation. So the smaller units of accommodation are those which are needed for people in need. So on to just a word on the South Hams housing offer for community housing that we have launched. We have a number of sites progressing well, you'll be pleased to hear. I can't give any details, unfortunately, of the exact sites at this stage, but it's really encouraging. And thank you very much to the landowners who have come forward to help with this. And we would urge everyone to talk to your community to see what opportunities might be available to build affordable housing in our communities in the areas where it's needed. And just finally, the housing advisory group that we have, we would like to have another a session to update the housing advisory group and ask for their ideas at some stage soon. And Izzy and I, head of housing, and I were talking about it, and I think we'd like to ask the group to give their ideas of what they'd like to talk about at the next meeting. And so that's what we'll steer on. What's what we'll be doing at the next housing advisory group. So we do want councillors generally to feel involved in what we're doing here in housing, which of course is very important to people. So that's just a snapshot of where we are. I don't know if anyone's got any questions.
Thank you, Denise. John.
Yeah, I don't want to get out of practice asking questions.
It's only fair. Fair dues.
Last July, the Devon County Council issued a news release announcing the setting up of a new housing commission, and the news release states that we, along with other district councils, are funding the commission. And I see that the former leader of this council sits on the commission. He's doing some really important work. I'm just wondering whether or not we, as an executive, bearing in mind the importance of housing, should ask the Overview and Scrutiny Committee to perhaps ask them to come along, or a representative from the Commission to come along and explain how things are going. I mean, they have been in place since July.
John, let me stop you there, because they have actually come here. Yeah, yeah, they spoke to me. Sorry you weren't there, but they were just gathering evidence at that stage, and it was early on. I think it was. I can't remember the date. It was probably.
It was 3 or 4 months back.
Well, at least that. Yeah, at least that. Well, it was me, and who else was here? Izzy was here, and Andy. I think I can't remember offhand, but they were basically gathering evidence, and we sat in this exact room, and they said, "What are your issues?" and we told them what we were. But I mean, when's their report coming out? Quite soon.
It's due very soon, Chairman. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So let's wait and see whether that happens. But I think if you know, they've been and asked for evidence, and we give it to them, and I think they also went on because fortunately we also have. Although he's not sits on the commission, David Hancock is part of with Exeter University is part of the people, so he's very much feeding into that as well.
I think, Chairman, the head of housing spent quite a long time with the chairman of the housing commission, also feeding in ideas about issues within the district.
Dan, did you?
Thank you. Might be a question for Mrs. Blake actually, rather than Councillor Howell. I'm not sure. I'd like some advice, please. Where the national park is the planning authority to the north of the district, affordable housing provision, would that still fall to us to determine through Devon Choice?
Yes, we're the statutory housing body, so yeah, the properties within the national park are allocated through Devon Home Choice.
So if an application which hasn't yet been determined has actually gone to the Inspectorate for Non-Determination from Dartmoor National Park, if that was determined and the development goes ahead, if it's in South Ham's current district area, it will be us that determines.
We won't determine that, but what we will do is we will have those properties to allocate through the register once they're through.
Sorry, that's what I meant.
Yeah,
yes.
And there will be a local connection criteria on those properties so that it will cascade out. So it will be at first within the park and the settlements, that immediate settlement, and then neighbouring settlements within the park, and then cascade out.
Sorry, Leader, indulge me, one last question. Would neighbouring settlements, would that include if the neighbouring settlements were in a different local authority area, in a different district council area?
It potentially could.
Thank you. Jackie.
Yeah, I had a meeting with the CEO of what was formerly the South Devon Rural Housing Association, which has now merged with Places for People, just a couple of weeks ago. And what emerged was that it seems like now suddenly they are looking for property to invest in for, social and affordable housing. So I just thought I'd flag that up actually, because I think there are places around. It's not for me appropriate at this point to say things, but I think there's maybe some investment that could be possible that they're looking to invest. So that could help feed in, and particularly that is around this kind of Totnes Dartington area. It has been their usual sort of interest area, but I think they're looking more widely now. So just saying.
No, thank you for that, Jackie. Let's see, Izzy's noting it down. Good. Right. And any more questions on that? No. Thank you, Denise, and thank you for all the work you're doing. And I think there are some quite exciting projects that soon we can announce and hopefully get some bricks coming out of the ground. Yeah. Right. So nothing more on that. John, over to you. Climate change and biodiversity emergency.
Got 5 minutes, I think.
Yeah. We could push it to 6 if you.
Sorry?
Yeah, as long as you like, John.
Well, no, for 5. Well, I'll be as quick as possible. I'd like to invite right at the beginning, and then I'll just go through what I've got. Adam, because he's been doing an awful lot of work on sort of the corporate side of things in terms of the carbon cost of our operation here, and a lot of other things. So, Adam, if you could give me the very long list that you gave me the other day as to all the things you've been doing.
Yeah, no worries. Good afternoon, members. So yeah, essentially what I've been doing recently is updating our greenhouse gas accounts for the council. We've done up to 21-22 financial year and 22-23 financial year. So now that those are done, I'm in the process of writing a report to explain what's happened with those greenhouse gas accounts and what the changes are. And then once that's done, I can then begin the data gathering process for the 23-24 financial year greenhouse gas accounting for the organisation. So that's been a big piece of work over the last couple of months. I've also gone back and corrected and refined our 2018 and 19 footprint, which is the first one we ever did. There's a lot of errors in that I spotted that I've been able to go out back and retroactively fix. The organisational decarbonisation plan's also coming along smoothly, so the greenhouse gas account and the footprinting will feed into that, so we can start to build a plan for the next 2 to 3 years. We are also in the process of designing an extension to the solar on Follerton House. So once that's all been sorted, we'll bring a proposal forward for members to review at that time. You would have noticed the road's been closed into Follerton House at the top end. That's because the National Grid are doing the connection work for the new rapid charger. That should be going live in May. And we're also doing some work on the leisure centres and trying to move along the PV work on those leisure centres that we had approved the budgets for a while ago, and putting together some decarbonisation proposals for the heating systems as well. And also working on a bid for the Public Sector Low Carbon Skills Fund to do a heat decarbonisation study for Follerton House as well. So that's about it.
Thank you, Adam. I left my thing on. The other thing that I wanted to mention, you've probably seen the press releases, hopefully, of the work that Sue Watts, our marine officer, has been doing in terms of the recycling of boats. So there was a boat was recycled at the Creekside Boatyard in Dartmouth the other day over a period of a week, and it's a really good project that is fairly unique and demonstrates that how you can make commercial sense out of recycling boats, because an awful lot of boats have come to the end of their natural life now. They were sort of the idea of glass fibre boats was invented about 30 odd years ago, and so most of them are coming to the end of their life now, and what do we do with them? And having a project like this as to how we get rid of them, because mostly either they sink and are just polluting our rivers and coasts, or they go to landfill. And this is a way of recycling them and reusing them. So I think some of the fibres are used in concrete and all sorts of different ways of putting them to good use. So that's a project that's just again, having a marine officer that's doing this sort of work, I think we're fairly unique in that respect, and it's a marvellous outcome for them. I'm talking to. I'm trying to set up. We've got a meeting set up to talk to various people about how to create a template for village halls and other community organisations to get PV on their roof, and so that there's a business plan that talks about the technology, what you need, and the amount you consume, and where it's going to cost, grant opportunities, a package that basically, because I get lots of emails about it, and I think the more that we can go out there and encourage people to be thinking about this, the better. So there's that.
Just on that, do you know when that might be ready? Because it's something parish councils
well,
would love
I can't
to
remember
hear.
when the meeting is, but it's in the next week or so. Yeah. And Adam's going to be involved in that as well, of course. the other thing I wanted to mention was, or you know, the keep it local work that's ongoing. I mentioned markets. I think we've got a meeting after this meeting to start the discussion about markets. Um, there's a huge amount of interest. I'm getting lobbied virtually on a daily basis about markets, but there's a huge opportunity. I mean, Totnes Market is a reasonably good market, but the other markets are pretty poor. And I was taken down to Cornwall at the weekend by a gentleman that's very interested in markets and is very knowledgeable about these things. To see some markets in Cornwall, and it was, you know, there's some obvious models out there that we should be adopting and thinking about how we can encourage our local markets to be more effective, and that feeds into the whole keep it local thing that I'm trying to promote. And that again, I think the stars are aligning with that. I'm in discussion with the Apricot Centre, Dartington, and another organisation that is we're looking at the possibility of creating a food hub at the Cider Press in Dartington. It's really down on its uppers. Well, I mean, it was a shopping centre, and I think it's only got one or two businesses left in it, and so there's a huge opportunity to turn that into an aggregation centre, and to help get local producers get their products to market. And I've also been in discussion with an organisation up in London called Growing Communities. They came to the symposium. The lady there has got a huge amount of experience in developing markets around London, and she's also developed a model and a statistical look at the business case of why these markets are important and how they have helped the businesses that supply the markets grow. And so, and this is and I'm, in terms of this, what might happen at the Cider Press, I'm pushing to build a business plan again around this concept, and also how it will ripple out to the other markets across the district and help local producers. I mean, the long term, you'd expect there to be more than one of these hubs. It's a retail outlet, but it's also an aggregation centre. So there's huge potential there, I think, and it's all very interesting and exciting. The final thing I wanted to mention was I was up in London just recently and gave a talk to this land use. They called it a summit. I don't know, but it was full of professors and heads of government departments. I think the head of DEFRA was there, and this strange organisation called Post that seems to feed into select committees. They do the background research, and so there's a lot of very interesting and important people there. And this was about land use and housing, and the impact. How do you marry the two? Because land use and biodiversity and regenerative farming, and you know, all these pressures on land, and it being a finite resource, and the impact of housing, and how you manage that. Biodiversity net gain was talked about an awful lot because of the new legislation around that, 10% on all applications, and all the many problems with it. Even if it's on site, these are lots of little pockets of ecology. There's an awful lot of evidence to say these things don't survive in the long term. You need connectivity, or you need scale, and if you do it off site as well, the likelihood is that they're going to be small. Are they going to survive? There is no real legislation. It is all about habitats as opposed to actual biodiversity, and will it actually work? So there's a lot of people concerned about BNG as being a suitable tool to encourage biodiversity net gain in the round. My talk was I started off talking about where we are and the number of homes we've got empty and second homes, and you know all the problems that assail the districts, the ratio of income to housing cost and etc., and how we were one of the worst in many of these respects. But the thing that seems to have got everybody's interest was the fact that I said, and I hope, and I did say it with my councillor hat on, so I hope I haven't upset too many people, but I don't believe that we need to be building 300,000 houses per year. And this every presentation that was made there about the impact of housing as part of and its on land use and biodiversity, etc., etc. They all quoted this figure, and I made the point that there is an awful lot of evidence accumulating and people saying that we don't need to build these houses, and the only way to stop the impact on land is to stop building so many bloody houses. The evidence is that we have already got more homes than households, and that gap is actually widening. There is a lot of problem with the size of houses. We seem to be building lots of houses that are far too big, which is why there is the problem, because ultimately the planning system is driven by a commercial interest. And that's a real issue. And if we're going to actually address this problem, we've got to make some serious changes to the market. This idea that you know the analysis of this 300,000 comes from a very simplistic supply side argument about, you know, well, prices are going up. Well, that must be because there aren't enough houses, so we need to build more houses. And in fact, it's the demand side that we should be looking at, and it's a much more complex picture. And if you look at that, you don't need to build so many houses. So I made that point. I hope and that actually seemed to go down very well. And a lot of people were quite interested in that. So that's the end of that. And then the last thing, I've gone over me 5 minutes, is, and thanks to Jackie for pointing it out to me, Earth Day. We've got Earth Day coming up, which is about pollution. And one of the things, certainly in my capacity here, I've not really done much with. And I think the whole plastics pollution issue is enormous. And we ought to, as a council, be doing more. And I'm going to try and think about and talk to Jackie and whoever else as to what exactly we can do. Obviously, encouraging businesses and the whole packaging thing is a big issue, but also about how we clean up the mess that we've already got. I think that's an important job that has possibly been neglected today. And Earth Day, I think it's the 22nd, isn't it? Yeah. So, which is just an awareness raising thing, but I think we ought to be doing it. That's me done.
Thank you, John. Good 5 minutes. No. Anyway, look. Any Jackie?
Thank you. Yeah, I just want clarification. Adam raised it about the PVs going on all the pavilion, on all the leisure centres. And I have an absolute understanding of what's happening in Totnes, because obviously since 2016 we've been trying to get PV on the pavilions, and I want to know when it's going to happen and who's delivering it. And secondly, just about the Earth Day thing, there's a whole package of stuff. It's an international event, and so it's this year it's talking about recognising the plasticine, not as in like the squidgy stuff, but the geological point that they're calling it now, the plastic time. And so there's a lot of material that if we could just circulate it as part of our comms, it'd be really positive, because there's easy steps that people can do. So that's just something I can just send over to Tom French maybe, or John maybe.
Michelle. No, thanks for that, Jackie. As far as the PVs are concerned, I mean, I made it clear that it's a top priority of this council to get PVs on our leisure centres. I don't know the details about it, but absolutely you will be involved in Totnes. It doesn't mean that you might not get your way, but you will be.
I just want it on there. It's
yeah.
not,
Okay. Good. Excellent. Yeah. Agreed. Totally agree with you. Right. Any more for any more? No. Well done, Denise. I'll close the meeting. Thank you very much.